What a week 3. You guys know I don't always say that. I'm not one that comes on every weekend and says, oh, what a weekend of college football. That was amazing. That was incredible. We've never seen anything like that before. It just never disappoints. College football rarely disappoints, but we do have some clankers of a weekend. And the schedule didn't set up in such a way that we had monumental matchups, major programs facing each other, top 10 teams, nothing like that. But I still had a good time this Saturday. Still thought that there were a lot of meaningful games, a lot of exciting games, a lot of interesting storylines, intriguing matchups that are still going on even as we speak. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis because of your contribution. We appreciate you being here, your engagement. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. If you would like for me to make sure that I address your comment or question, please include a super chat. Otherwise, I will get to some and not to others. It's just kind of random from there. But in regards to making sure that your comment and your question gets noticed and recognized and acknowledged and answered, then leave the super chat. All right, folks, the Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, I'm going to guess that there are people that are watching right now that have done Amazon shopping today or will tonight or will tomorrow. I guarantee it. So please use the Amazon link. It is the same shopping experience for you. Doesn't cost you a penny. Look at this fine merch that I've got on. We'll have full details of that tonight and in coming days. We don't do enough to let you know about the fine merch that our buddy Joey Foster has put together for us at the Voice of College Football that we have made available for all of you, free shipping included. So check out what we've got in merchandise. Top 25 that actually makes sense will, of course, shake up considerably, and it should. The rankings should be shaken every week because when you've only played 2 games and then there's a third game, it only makes sense that that game is 1/3 of the season. So there should be a lot of change in the rankings regardless of what happens. I do believe that each and every week there are certain games. Every game tells us something about the teams playing, regardless of whether it was exactly the way we anticipated and so was a 2-touchdown favorite and they won by 2 touchdowns and that's the way it was. And it was what everybody expected. It still tells us something about that team that won, about that team that lost. Then there are other games that tell us a ton. And those teams that I think, in a sense, we found out quite a bit about today would be Alabama. I think we found out a lot about Alabama to the negative side. Anyone else in particular? We're probably going to find out something about Colorado tonight, even though they are much better. They should blow out Colorado State. They're a 24-point favorite. Right now, they're in a tussle. They're not looking the best. Shiloh Sanders had an 80-yard interception return in this game. And right now, I believe it's still 14-all as we stand. I believe we found out a lot about the ACC and the Big Ten in regards to those mid-tiers, not the teams that are going to compete for championships, but the mid-tier of the ACC and the mid-tier to low tier of the Big Ten as well. And we'll continue to figure out who showed us something. Who showed us something on this day? Georgia, South Carolina. There was a lot to unpack there as well. So we'll get to all of it here at the Voice of College Football. Where do we start? We start with scores. Let's go to the scores, the games in progress here. Let's start there. So we've got Louisiana, UAB. Louisiana's up 34-3 right now in the third quarter. We've got Wyoming and Texas. This game was tied at 10 going into the fourth quarter. Texas has scored 3 touchdowns. They lead 31-10 over the Cowboys. We've got FAU and Clemson. We're going to have post-game of that. Clemson post-game over on the Clemson channel with our guys Edward and Jordan. That's coming up, of course, after the Clemson game. They are demolishing FAU and Tom Herman and Clay Casey Thompson, 48-7. Not Klay Thompson. Casey Thompson, 48-7. TCU on top of Houston, 36-13. That game almost a final. Texas State on top of Jackson State, 63-27. They could use their former coach, I guess, at Jackson State. We've got, again, CU and CSU, 14-14. Fresno State leads Arizona State 13-0 at ASU. 12 minutes left in the first half. Kansas on top of Nevada, 7-3, 13 minutes left in the first half. UTEP, Arizona just started, 7 minutes left in the first quarter. Recent finals, Oregon just went final against Hawaii, 55-10 Ducks. BYU with an upset at Arkansas, 38-31. They trailed most of that game, at least in the first half, and came back to win at 38-31. So bad loss for the SEC of sorts. Stanford loses to Sacramento State 30-23. And then the rest of the games you should know all about. Earlier in the day, significant game against, when I talk about results that tell us something, how about the Swamp tonight? Maybe that game is more telling than any other game, both for the Florida Gators and Billy Napier, who, wow, won a huge game over Tennessee, and maybe the Vols not quite as good as we thought. But I think we're going to see this from week to week. We are going to see this from week to week, and most of us are going to jump to conclusions that, see, this team's really not that good, or see, they're really good. And you know what you can expect? You can expect, for as good as Florida looked tonight, that just in the next couple of weeks, I don't know if it's going to be next week, but in the next few weeks, they're not going to look that good. And you know what? For as awful as the Vols looked in getting blasted in the first half, and they made a meager comeback to get kind of in the game, but really that game was over at halftime, that Tennessee is going to look much better, and they're going to play winning football against good teams in the SEC. And look at that jumbled mess in the SEC Western Division. Who was the best team today? LSU. And the way things stand right now, if I was a betting man, I would put my money on LSU to take the SEC Western Division. Because even though they lost that initial game against Florida State, gave up 31 straight points, showed themselves not to be a great team. Look at Bama, look at A&M. Ole Miss, sure, they're going to be fun to watch. They're going to do some things on a particular day. They've got a date against Bama next week, but Ole Miss, man, they barely staved off Georgia Tech. That was a close game with about 7 minutes left. It was one-score game. Georgia Tech had a chance to take the lead before Ole Miss scored a bunch of garbage points late, much like they did against Tulane last week. Mississippi State got trounced by LSU, so that Western Division, LSU looks like the team right now. Georgia, South Carolina, we'll talk more about that. The Bulldogs trailed 14-3 at halftime. I posted an instant analysis on that game, Georgia, South Carolina. Check it out. There are millions who have watched the LSU Mississippi State breakdown. I think it's the most successful video we've ever published here at the Voice of College Football. LSU and Mississippi State, instant analysis, and then also the Penn State, Illinois game. We did instant analysis on that as well. Check out those videos. All right. Let's get to the phone lines, starting with Andrew. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Mark, I am frustrated. Can you tell me how I should be feeling about my Georgia Bulldogs?
You're frustrated. Why? Well, first of all, what should cause you not to be frustrated is trade places with anybody else in the country. Start there.
I mean, I just want to see Georgia perform like the number one ranking that they have. And they really have not done that yet.
Whoever ranked them number one. Yeah, that's beside the point. That kind of meaningless, but I've got them 23 or 24, something like that. Anyway, yes. So they got off to a bad start. I would be happy with a win. I would think that you would be ecstatic right now.
I'm happy with the adjustments that the coaching staff made.
Yes.
And you look at the stat line, you know, Georgia's finished with 460 yards and almost 30 first downs, but a lot of points got left on the field. Frankly, I mean, 2 missed field goals and just a couple other drives that sputtered out, really. But yeah, I mean, their offense, it doesn't feel as explosive this year. It feels very timid. Um, so that's what I see when I watch them, and it just it doesn't feel like it's enough right now if Georgia wants to be a competitor to win another national championship. It feels like they're really going to have to level up their offense a little bit.
Well, I would say that if I thought somebody else out there was that dominant uh, and going to be a team that was nearly unbeatable, that Georgia would need to play their A++++ game against. But I get your point. But in the second half, they looked explosive to me. Now, they weren't throwing 75-yard bombs, but who really does that on a consistent basis? No one. There was a lot of routes down the seams, a lot of crossing routes, deep crossing routes that they were hitting to Ra Thomas, Dominic Levet, and those guys.
And there were a lot of crossing routes that were getting hit against the defense in the first half for sure. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe how well Spencer Rattler was playing. I mean, kudos to him. He looked really, really good for the first half, and it's cliche to say it was a tale of two halves, but for both Georgia's defense, Georgia's offense, and for Spencer Rattler, it certainly was. I mean,
He had a great game, start to finish.
yeah, he had some struggles in the fourth quarter for sure. I think he threw 2 interceptions towards the end of the game, but that's them trying to get back in it and make a play at the end. So I get that, but I won't harp on Georgia anymore because there's so much other stuff that went on, and you mentioned just like I'm by the way. I want to clear up that I am happy that Georgia won for sure. Absolutely.
And I'm pushing back to a certain extent. I totally get it. When you have championship aspirations and you root for certain levels of team at that top tier, then you get concerned when you see, okay, can't take too much away from the first 2 weeks. And then you face a decent opponent who actually obviously struggled 2 weeks ago against another decent team. And so then you take some concern away from that. I'm not discounting that at all. So I'm just trying to balance that out with some, hey, be happy that you won. You were down 14-3, and your staff did make adjustments because I thought South Carolina, considering the disadvantage they had along the offensive line versus your D line, did everything, and they had no running game, zero. It came from Spencer Rattler. The running backs did nothing. That they were about as creative and effective as they could be in the first half to mount any kind of offense.
Right, and we knew that they weren't going to be very effective running the game. They were averaging 53 yards coming in, so I'm not surprised that they struggled on the ground. Plus, it got kind of sloppy out there too during the game. But honestly, when halftime rolled around and it was 14-3, I was very, very concerned, legitimately, that Georgia was going to lose that game because I hadn't seen anything in the first half that gave me any confidence that they were going to be able to come back. But I am, again, happy that they did. But moving on from Georgia, Alabama has got a serious quarterback situation. I watched the majority of that game, and not only was the quarterback play horrendous, but the O-line didn't do Buckner nor Ty Simpson any favors by just refusing to give him any pass protection. I mean, what do you think? What do you think's going on there?
Wow, this is startling. Yes, because we went into this season all knowing that the high flying Tua, Mac Jones, Bryce Young offenses were not going to be displayed this year, but that they were going to be run heavy. But still, you would expect the typical Alabama quarterback based on who they had coming into this season. I was expecting they're not going to throw 35 or 40 touchdowns. They're going to throw in the low 20s, 25 touchdowns. They're going to throw for, 180 to 220 yards per game. It's going to be an effective passing game. It's just going to be limited, and it's going to be run heavy, but it's still going to be complemented by the passing game. I didn't see any of the game. I was watching other games. I started to get interested when, well, for one thing, the broadcast was affected by the delay. And then once they came back, they could only show the game from the camera up top. So you really couldn't watch the game for most of the game. And so I bailed on it. So I didn't see it, but I see that Tyler Buckner started and went 5 for 13 or something. And they were obviously completely ineffective. 3 points against a horrible South Florida. If they were playing an SEC team, if they were playing Ole Miss today and they had that kind of offensive output, I would be alarmed. But they were playing South Florida. I don't even know where to begin. This situation's much worse than I anticipated. And I try to be measured and I try to be balanced and I try to say, okay, it's only one game. Let's see what they've got next week. And it's only one data point. But they were a 34-point favorite and they struggled. Did they try all three quarterbacks in that game?
Don't ask me if Milroe came in. I don't know if he did or not. But what I wanted to say was, I was watching it in one of like 4 screens, and just as I was paying attention to it, dividing my attention amongst the other games, I saw 3 sacks at least, maybe 4. So I don't know how many USF finished with at the end of the game, but if the O-line isn't going to be able to protect the quarterback, then the mobility that Jalen Milroe gives Alabama may leave him as the best option that they have at this point until they can figure out what's going on with their line.
And then you just cut down his options in the passing game. You just give him plays in which he's throwing to this outlet guy. He's throwing this slip screen. He's throwing that delayed screen. He's going to throw a bomb, and it's a 9 route, and that's who you're going to. And if you don't feel comfortable, then you just take off and run. And you just drill that into his head that you're not making progressions and reads. You're not doing that. None of that. And that's how you run your offense.
Breaking it down Barney style, I think, is going to have to be the best way to approach it at this point, because getting more complex, I don't think, is going to help the situation. That offense was really struggling to move the ball, and they were able to pull away at the end. But I thought going into the season that Alabama was going to have quarterback issues, but I didn't know that they were going to be this exacerbated. There's so much more to talk about, but I know that you've probably got other people waiting, so I could hop off here.
Well, Andrew, call us anytime. Yeah, we've got about 5 people waiting at this point.
Okay. All right, Mark. You
appreciate you being here.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Good to hear from the SEC and the defending national champions. Yes, they scuffled early. I posted a video on that. I laid out everything I had to say about Georgia and South Carolina. Not that we can't talk about it here, but we will let you guys produce the show and dictate what we talk about. And I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything here in the chat. And Tim, certainly let me know if you are on board for other reasons or you want to talk football. We'll bring in our Michigan man, JJ McCarthy. What's going on today?
Hey, what's up, man? First of all, first comment I'm going to make. Out of the top 10, there was only, to me, 2 dominant performances. Okay. Washington and Ohio State. Unless I'm missing some, I'm pretty sure those were the only 2 dominant performances. Now, Washington State, to me, is the most impressive just because they played a Power 5 opponent. But don't get it twisted. The Ohio State performance, even though they played a Group of 5 team, was still, I would say, the second best performance of the day.
Wow. That's high praise coming from you.
Well, I like to troll and stuff, but when it's time to really get down to some football, I gotta turn it off sometimes.
Ohio
I got
State
this.
was impressive. I didn't expect to watch much of that game. Like, understand that for my entire life, I never missed Ohio State games. I watched every play, but doing what I'm doing, I just feel it more necessary to watch the games that matter. And so, for example, I didn't see them play Youngstown State at all until later in the week, and then I went back and watched some of the game. And so today, I didn't expect with all the 3:30 games. And then I can't even go through what was going on at the time, but I just thought, you know what, I'm going to check in on this. And it was when it was still early, like 7-3. And I watched quite a bit until it was just completely ridiculous. And I thought they looked really good too. Again, it was Western Kentucky, but I thought they were pretty dominant. Yeah.
Yeah, so I preference that to say I'm not going to talk any crap about Ohio State today because this week to me, they clearly had a much better performance than we did. So now let's talk about my team real quick.
Okay.
I don't know what JJ. I don't know if he had a hangover last night. I don't know what is going. I've never seen JJ play that bad. Now the TCU game obviously had the 2 pick sixes, but even in that game, he still had plenty of good bright spots.
Oh yeah.
Tonight, I don't know what happened to McCarthy tonight. He was terrible tonight. He was inaccurate. He was trying to force passes. He was I don't know what he was doing. The run game to me was fine. The run game's getting back to form to me. The pass protection had some issues, but I don't know. Again, I don't know if he partied last night. I don't know what he did, but he looked terrible today.
This is strange because I have not looked at any plays of this game. I saw that they were only up 14-6 at half, but again, better games on. I didn't expect them to in any way
Very
be
strange
challenged
game
by any stretch of the imagination. So I did see 14-6 and thought, wow, they must not be playing too well because Bowling Green's not good. Now I'm looking at the box score and seeing 31 rushes, 13 passes. So they only ran 44 plays in the game.
Yeah, I'll explain what happened here.
Crazy.
I'll explain what happened here. They get a stop. No complaints about defense. This might be my favorite Michigan defense. I'll get to that next. But so they get a stop. They get the ball. They do nothing but run plays and score. They don't even pass the ball, right? They get another stop. They get the ball. They get all the way down to the red zone, and JJ throws an abhorrent pick from like the 3-yard line, like second and goal. It was terrible pick. They do a poot. They get another stop, right? Or they kick a field goal, I think, or something like that. And then they do a kickoff, right? They do a pooch kick, and on the pooch kick, Michigan fumbles the ball. So they get the ball back again. So Michigan hasn't had the ball back since JJ threw a pick. So by the time they do get the ball back, it's like mid-second quarter. So they only, mind you, like I said, they get the ball in the second quarter. So it was just a very strange game. And then they almost fumbled it again on another pooch kick. So yeah, it was a very strange game. JJ threw another pick. I think it was a deep ball when they were at like the 40. But yeah, very strange game. JJ played terrible. Bottom line with that.
It's hard to run only 44 plays in a game.
Yeah, I think it was a mix of the new clock rule. Some teams do take advantage of that, but I think it was mainly Michigan scored quick on nothing but run plays. They get the ball back. JJ throws a pick. They chew up some clock. They kick a field goal, I think is what happened, if I remember correctly. On kickoff, Michigan fumbled the ball, so they get the ball back again. And then Michigan gets another stop, but by that time, Michigan didn't get the ball back till I think like the second quarter, if I'm right, or maybe the end of the first, because then JJ throws another pick. I'm probably messing up the time a bit, but that's why they didn't have that many. And we also took all our starters out in the third quarter as well. It was one of the strangest games I've seen.
Well, there were 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm getting them all. At least 4 3-and-outs. So that's going to chew up a lot of. And then the sequence that you just ran down, you're not going to have the football when that happens. And then, your touchdown and scoring drives, 4 plays, 3 plays, 5 plays. Those are pretty quick. So that's just crazy to see 44 plays. I would like to know what games had the fewest amount of offensive plays for a team. That's
probably up there.
One of them. Yeah.
That's up there. And also, I think part of that also is Michigan took out all their starters like 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and the backups weren't doing nothing. We were just running the ball like 3 consecutive times every time. One of the strangest games I've seen. There was also like a very scary moment with one of the opposing players who got hurt. So that took some time. But anyways, I mean, the brightest spot about this game, really, because I mean, I can't say too much about the offense outside the run game. The defense. This might be my favorite Michigan defense I've seen in a long time, and that's really the only bright spot I could talk about outside of the run game and obviously that. So yeah, man, I ain't got much to say about that besides that game when it comes to that. I think it's true what you said. I think it's wide open right now. It is so. When's the last time you remember being this wide open? Because it feels wide open.
I don't. I don't remember a time. We'd have to go back more than 10 years.
You think that long? Dang.
Yeah, where we're 3 weeks deep into the season, and you could see how many teams winning the national championship. 10.
Yeah. And I think Bama's bad, which is weird to say.
Yeah.
But I really believe that they're not that good this year. I don't get the O-line. I mean, all offseason they talk about how big it was. Like they're bigger than the average NFL line, but they're playing like they're 200 pounds. They're getting beat off the ball so much. I just don't get it.
Nick Saban made really bad choices for his coordinators. That's one thing. He for one time in his career just made really bad selections.
Which is strange.
They have too much talent. They could, if this was 2 years ago, they could go in and say, we're not going to throw the ball, and they could run it down South Florida's throats. They played a really bad football team today, and they couldn't score.
Yeah, exactly. And the Texas game was weird too. I know they ended up being 31-10, but it was 10-10 in the fourth quarter, I believe, at one point. I mean, it was one of the weirdest week 3s I've ever seen.
Yeah, Texas obviously had a hangover too. Yeah.
So, but I am concerned because last thing before I go,
Florida State.
Yeah, that's another one.
That game, it
was 31-29, right?
Easily lost that game, 31-29, and BC had 18 penalties in that game, and they stopped Florida State with about 90 seconds left. They would have gotten the punt, but they had a face mask, so that ended the game. That gave FSU the automatic first down, and the game was over. Otherwise, BC was going to get the ball, decent field position with about 90 seconds left to play, just to drive the ball 30 or 40 yards, kick the game-winning field goal.
That's crazy. And then last thing before I go, when it comes to JJ, the thing about JJ, I'm trying to compare. I don't know what type of quarterback I compare this to, but he has the capability of playing at an elite level, but he also has the capability of just having a dud of a game. Of a quarterback that is that a gunslinger mentality where you think you could just, be loose with the football and try to make every play, even though it's a bad play, because it just feels like he's very. You get what I'm saying?
Well, like when he first started to get playing time, I thought that he was going to be a gunslinger in a different way, meaning he was going to be more of a guy that improvises with his legs and maybe runs himself out of the play more than Harbaugh would want him to, and not sticking to going through his reads in the pocket and would take off and run around and do all those sorts of things. And he got a little loose with the football, I remember, against Maryland. But not in terms of throwing. He only threw 5 interceptions last year. He hasn't had
I wonder,
bad interception games.
I wonder, and people dismiss this, but how much of this could be Harbaugh's not there on game day? Like, you watched this game, right? And the flow of the game and the energy felt like something that if Harbaugh was there, there would be things that, like, for example, you're running the ball very effectively in this game, and you're choosing to continue to get out of character and try to force pass plays. I feel like if Harbaugh was there and your quarterback's struggling or he's making bad decisions, I feel like Harbaugh would have calmed him down and probably ran the ball more. I feel like he would. I feel like people underplay how much an elite head coach value is on the sideline.
I think that's a good point. We'll never know, but you would think that they would be able to handle it better against Bowling Green. But yeah, when the guy that is there that everybody looks to, and he's not there on Saturday, even though you've got everything in place and they've gone through, I'm sure, from A to Z, how everything's going to work and communicate, and who coached. I forgot their 3-game
So today was Sharon Moore, and
Okay.
there was. I don't know how to explain this, but there's something where like I feel like a head coach value too is just managing the energy on the sideline. And I feel like out of the three coaches, I feel like Mentor was probably the best if I had to choose one.
Mm.
Because it didn't feel like Michigan football, if that makes sense tonight. It felt like it didn't feel like a horrible team tonight to me.
Well,
Which
they
is
still
weird to
won by
say, but
25 points, and they still played the defense the way that they should.
yeah, no doubt. I think in terms of the energy and the flow of offense, then it feels Harbaugh-esque is pretty much what I'm saying. But yeah, that's all I
Gotcha.
got, man. I still, again, we got the best front seven in the land, so that's the one positive. All right, man. Have a good day.
All righty. Have a good one. All right. We've got Xavier Speak here who says Irish gonna smoke Buckeyes. All right. So the only thing we need you to do when you make comments like that is come back next week and we'll celebrate with you. When Notre Dame wipes Ohio State off the field in South Bend, we will applaud and we will celebrate your prediction there, Xavier. So we want you to come back next Saturday night. We want to make sure that you're here. And so you get full recognition, okay, for your prediction. So just mark that down. Make sure. Voice of College Football, Saturday night, the 23rd, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Boom. And you're going to be here and we're going to, I don't know, we'll set off fireworks or something. We'll plan it all week. All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We've got Dominic on the line.
I cannot get over what that. You want to know what I saw a few moments ago?
What did you see a few minutes ago?
Stanford lost to Sacramento State, an FCS team at home.
Yes. I read that score. Yeah. That's pretty bad. Pretty awful.
Stanford, what happened?
Well, it's been happening for quite some time. This might be the bottom of the barrel, though. You're right.
Literally. Like, what was going on with their offense late in that game?
I couldn't really tell you. I did not see any of the game. What did they lose by? Let's see. Where's our final score here?
I got it. 30-23.
Okay. So yeah, Stanford's a mess. That's all there is to it. But we're going to give Troy Taylor some time to make his way, to find his way. They were down, let's see, it was 17-14 at half. So it was a close game all the way. And yeah, they're a bad football team. They beat Hawaii. And of course, they couldn't shoot. USC could have scored 100 points on them last week if they wanted to.
Yeah, like Stanford, that O-line for Stanford is an absolute mess right now. Like, I honestly don't know what else to say, but honestly, kudos to Sacramento State, an FCS team beating a team that is just a hot mess with that offense. So kudos to Sacramento State, man. They were
Are
on
you a
fire
Stanford
tonight.
fan?
No, I'm a Virginia fan. I know
Oh,
we lost to
nice.
Maryland.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear from we just heard from Virginia fans. Now we're talking about Stanford. I like to talk about some other teams besides the usuals all the time.
Yeah, but I know I hate to get off topic, but we got hammered by Maryland on Friday.
Yeah, it started well.
Yeah, started off well, but our O-line is just an absolute mess.
Yeah, I saw the game. I was not surprised that Maryland took it from there. And your young quarterback made a lot of bad decisions, but he's young. He's just breaking in as a freshman. Anthony, can't think of his last name now. Anthony's got a long last name. Caliandro, something like that. Calandria.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Well, yeah, our young QB made some bad decisions. Our O-line is just a literal mess. I mean, our D-line has not been looking too bad, but our O-line needs to step it up a notch.
Okay. Do you like your head coach?
Yeah, I definitely like our head coach. He's just making some bad calls. I mean, yeah, I like him, but he just made some bad calls in that game.
All right. Anything else you want to hit on?
That's pretty much gonna be it.
Well, I am glad that Stanford gave you something to enjoy tonight.
Yeah, they did.
The mighty Cardinal.
Yep.
All right, Dominic. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Again, the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Doesn't cost you a penny. Please use the link. We've tried it out with like 20 people. It's the same shopping experience. So when you shop on Amazon, please use our link. Also, we've got new Big 12 and SEC channels. Those links are in the description section as well. And so please join us there, Big 12 and SEC. So if you like the Big 12 and you like the SEC, or you're a general college football fan, please subscribe there. If you hate the SEC and you hate the Big 12, I'm going to still ask that you would subscribe if you understand the complete vision here at the Voice of College Football, and you will help us succeed. Jackson, what's going on?
It's going all right. How's it going with you, Mark?
It's going pretty well.
Yeah, check out the SEC channel and the Big 12 channel if you like SEC content and Big 12 content.
There we
And
go.
let's get it over to 1,000.
1,000.
That's right.
Jackson, we appreciate
Speaking
all your
of-
retweets and all of your posts on X.
Oh, thanks, man. I make sure to tell everybody, check out those post-game shows.
Yes, they are all over the place. They keep me busy all day on Saturday.
But yeah, today was a crazy day for a boring slate.
Yeah, I thought it was a good day of college football. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Every time we always have a boring slate, you know there's going to be some upsets happening and some near upsets.
Well, I just think that we had a lot of mediocre teams playing each other. So I don't know if we saw a lot of upsets. We just saw a lot of close games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that Missouri game, that amazed me right there. The 61-yard field goal. Holy cow.
Did everyone see that out there? I was watching that game. Kansas State, Mizzou, great game, back and forth, two evenly matched teams. What was it? 27 all. And
it was 30-27. Missouri stormed the
27
field.
all. And Mizzou was in Kansas State territory, and they got backed up by penalties. And you thought that they might throw a Hail Mary, but no, they gave the kicker a 61-yard shot. And that kicker's been around a while because he was the same kicker that was kicking against Georgia last year. I know. I can't think of his last name. Hubis.
It was Harrison Mavis.
Mavis. Yes, there it is. And 61-yard field goal, the longest in the history of the SEC for a game winner.
Oh, I loved it. You know, everybody was so happy. I mean, I was unhappy about my prediction being wrong, but I was just like, well, you know, I'm happy for Missouri. Because, I mean, they got to have something to look forward to. I mean, but I did see where Big Game Boomer on Twitter was saying, oh, Missouri's going to be a contender in the SEC East. And I'm just saying, let's not throw the cart in before the horse just yet. But after seeing Florida upset Tennessee, okay, maybe it wasn't wrong on that. Who knows? It's looking crazy in the East Division.
Well, it depends what you consider a contender. Georgia could go 8-0 in the conference, and the second place team could be 5-3 in that division. That doesn't mean that they're contending for the division. That's what Mizzou could be.
Yeah. But I will say, though, kryptonite is Gainesville for the Tennessee Volunteers. They always fall apart there. They haven't won there since 2003. I don't know what it is with Tennessee, really.
Yeah, well, Tennessee's got a quarterback who's not nearly as efficient as Hendon Hooker. He's good. He's not a bad quarterback, and he's got tremendous arm talent. Obviously, he can throw the ball through a brick wall. And I don't think that they've replaced. And I thought that they had replaced their wide receivers. I thought that the guys. Brew McCoy's an excellent player, but he's not a burner down the field 60-yard guy. He's an underneath guy, big physical guy. I don't think that they've replaced Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt.
No.
Is one thing. I know their best offensive lineman, Cooper Mays, has been out too.
Yeah. They need some good luck, especially in the coming weeks. But I will say, Bama looked kind of sloppy against South Florida, but
kinda.
Well, I'm just trying to be nice, but I'm just trying to not rage too much. I'm not gonna rage at my Crimson Tide on here.
I would say that has to be, and I didn't see any of the game, but it's pretty obvious from the opponent and the stats and the final score. Can anybody tell us of a worse game that Alabama's played since 2008?
Yeah, we look like a disaster, and I'll be honest, I don't think we should even be in the top 10. I mean, I'll tell you of a team that's more deserving, Utah. Utah should be in the top 10.
Oh, I could name all sorts of teams that deserve to be in the top 10 above Alabama. Rutgers does. Syracuse does. There's all sorts of teams that have won better games than Bama and haven't lost. So,
well, Virginia Tech got a spanking today from Rutgers. Rutgers and I'm looking at a stat from the Big 12. So Oklahoma State got beat 33-7 by South Alabama. That's not good for Mike Gundy. And Matt Campbell went down 10-7 against Ohio. That's going to make his seat hotter at Iowa State. And I see Cincinnati went down against their rival Miami, Ohio, 31-24.
Yes.
So I wonder what that says about the Big 12 on the one hand, but on the other hand, BYU did beat Arkansas. I think, honestly, Arkansas not having Rocket Sanders did help BYU a little bit because Rocket Sanders was out due to a knee injury.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I may have made a different prediction, but I didn't realize that.
Oh, don't feel bad, man. I picked Arkansas to win too. So I was dead wrong on that. And West Virginia had a big win in this year's edition of the Backyard Brawl. I'm thinking that buys a little time for Neil Brown.
It should.
Yeah, because, I mean, big rivalry win helps his case. Because I remember Joey Foster and I were talking like a few months back. You know, he was saying if West Virginia loses, don't be surprised if he gets fired the next day. And I've got a feeling Neil Brown kept an eye on that. And he's like, I better fly right and upset Pitt in my own backyard.
Pitt's offense is terrible. They started the game and they ran every play. They ran the ball for 10 or 11 consecutive plays, which was fine. They went right down the field and kicked a field goal. And then after that, West Virginia shut down their running game, and Phil Jurkovec, I don't know what has happened to him. I don't know if it's bad coaching or it's injuries. He was a better quarterback as a freshman as he is now. He was terrible tonight, and he was terrible last week, 10 for 32 against Cincinnati. So he's played two defenses that are not anything great. He's played two marginal defenses, and he has looked completely lousy.
Yeah, he is not doing so hot. But maybe they'll pick up the pace against North Carolina. Who knows? But maybe they will, maybe they won't. But at the same time, though, Pitt is a pretty scary place for those that are in the top 25, especially North Carolina. Not saying Pitt's upsetting anybody next week. Don't be surprised if that happens, though. And I was looking at the stats of Michael Penix today, where he had 27 of 35 passes completed, 473 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns. And I did the math for each of the 3 games they had, and it equals to 1,332 yards. Divide that by 3, and it's an average of 444 yards. It's pretty big. Are we ready to say Penix is a Heisman winner yet or no?
Are we ready to say that he's the Heisman winner? Jackson.
Is he a Heisman?
We've played 3 games.
Right.
And he's played 3, I'll be kind, marginal teams. No, I won't be kind. Crappy teams. No, of course he's not a Heisman winner. He's a Heisman contender. He's an extremely talented player. He's an excellent quarterback and probably the second best quarterback in the country, probably in the top 4. Absolutely. Yeah. But the Heisman winner?
Well, what can I say? I get impressed easily.
Jackson, that probably that in and of itself has qualified you to get a Heisman vote. You know why? Because you, like many other Heisman voters, can go ahead and vote for the Heisman Trophy before the season's over.
Well, I will say, though, if I was running college football, I wouldn't be having the Heisman Trophy presentation the second week of December. I'd move it to the end of the regular season, end of the national championship, like week after.
You want to see all the games count. I get that.
Yep.
I've often thought about that. This is pretty much what I thought of the Washington-Michigan State game. And basically, Washington ripped off 3 quick touchdowns. They were burying Michigan State and just said, imagine the impact of Mel Tucker's absence. With him, it might look something like this. Washington 21, Michigan State nothing, meaning I don't know that Michigan State really missed Mel Tucker. Don't know that they will miss him in the future.
Yeah. Sean Garner said, don't bring up Cincy. Sorry about that, Sean. Got to. It's college football. It says on the title, voice of college football.
What's the problem?
He said, my aunt, it was something about Cincinnati. He didn't like the Cincinnati loss or win against Pitt.
Okay. All right, Jackson. Anything else, sir?
That's about all. I'm just excited about the exciting slate of week 4 next week. All kinds of games.
Absolutely.
So we know game day is going to Ohio State, Notre Dame, but
yes. We know that I'm always intrigued, fascinated, and want to know where college game day is headed. That always makes my week.
I just wonder if bid noon kickoff will go to Oregon State, Washington. I see you got the Oregon State helmet.
Yes.
I always love that.
I made sure before I sat down that everybody on display won their games. Whether they looked good or not. Pointing at you, Bama.
I love that little helmet collection you got. I love it.
Yes, it's been on hold for over a year now. We've
I
not
got
accepted
like a little
any
mini
further
helmet.
helmets.
I got like a little mini helmet collection. What I do is just kind of put the teams in each conference, and what I do is just based off what the future is going to look like 3 years from now.
All right.
But
all right, Jackson. We appreciate the call, sir.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
Have a good night. All right. Oh boy, I could go on and on and on. I will say that I continue to be fascinated by people that care where college game day goes. I just never understood that. Never understood that. And it's a great show, or it was a great show. I don't know if it's a great show now. I haven't seen it for about 15 years. But I trust that it's a great show. I trust that it's a great show. Actually, the last job I had at ESPN, the guy that reported to me, one of 12 people that reported to me, was in charge of audio for College Game Day, and he was an exceptional talent. It's a great show. But I don't even know. I know that Pat McAfee's now on the show. I learned that yesterday. I posted a video because I thought it was rather impressive that Pat McAfee had this enormous amount of people watching him from the College Game Day set. And I knew that ESPN signed him for some ungodly amount of money that was something close to what I make here. And that's all I know about Pat McAfee. And I know that he tends to be kind of wild and crazy and outside the box. I don't know that from personal consumption, but I hear things, I see little clips on Twitter and social media. And then I thought it was interesting because I got done with the live stream yesterday and I saw that Pat McAfee was doing his College Game Day routine in Boulder. And I clicked it on and I watched it for about 2 or 3 minutes. He was on there with Dion, and those dudes should have been like, I don't know. I thought that they were going to be making out soon. I was predicting that to be the next thing, that the two would be making out. So I didn't want to see that. So I didn't need those guys. Didn't need to waste my time listening to them pat each other on the back. So that's all I watched, the Pat McAfee, and that's my first exposure to Pat McAfee's show. I think that was his show. It looked like College Game Day, so I didn't know if exactly that was his show or not. So then that sparked me to make some comments about such things going on in the media landscape right now. We got Rob on the line. Rob, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Not too much. How you doing?
Hey, pretty good. So I just always wonder why, like, as a fan of Notre Dame, haven't been on the show in a while, but I always wonder why other Notre Dame fans kind of make us all look kind of stupid sometimes. I'm not saying every Notre Dame fan, but if you watch the last couple games, well, really all season, we haven't really played anyone all that good. And I'm not trying to like diminish other teams. Like NC State has a pretty good defense, and they had like I think it was like 18. I might be wrong on the number, but I know they had like at least 18 games in a row where they held their opponents to 30 points or less.
Yep.
And so, we actually scored like 45 on them, but it took all game for us to get those 45 points. So that wasn't like a terrible game, but then we come back today and it was another sloppy game. I mean, 17 points given up to Central Michigan. That's not really anything to be excited about if you're a Notre Dame fan of the defense. Like the defense needs to really shore some things up, especially with Ohio State scoring 66 today. That's their best game easily offensively of the year. Granted, they had some defensive scores as well, and a lot of turnovers for who they were playing. But ultimately, like Ohio State had their best game of the year going into this Notre Dame game, and Notre Dame's had a couple of sloppy games like in a row going into this Ohio State game. So anybody that thinks that Notre Dame is just going to like slaughter Ohio State hasn't really been paying attention to this matchup for one thing for quite a while. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think it's going to be a good game, and I'm not saying Notre Dame can't win, but this is easily our biggest test of the season until like USC. And part of me still thinks USC is going to be a tougher challenge, but we'll have to see how Ohio State goes from here. Easily Kyle McCord's best game of the year so far. So,
well, as usual, Rob, you make a lot of sense. And I have no issue with Notre Dame fans being confident. I have no issue with them seeing Ohio State struggle and being even more confident. I have no issue with them thinking, well, they have their best quarterback in Sam Hartman than they've had probably going back to Jimmy Clausen or before that, Brady Quinn. There's a lot of things that favor Notre Dame going into this game. They're playing at home. They haven't played Ohio State at home since 1996. So it should be a great game. It should be a fairly close game. Should be. Things can work in one direction or the other. Turnovers that can make a blowout. But I find it interesting. Like you said, there are delusional fans in every fan base. So I'm never on here calling out fan bases to say they're ridiculous, they're delusional, because every fan base has smart fans, dumb fans, delusional fans, optimistic fans, pessimistic fans, all that in every fan base. But it's funny because the Notre Dame people that I run into on social media, they've been notching this as an automatic win for months.
Yeah, and I don't really understand it. I mean, I knew going into this year, with even getting Sam Hartman, I'm like, yeah, it's our best quarterback since Clausen for sure. But It seems like Notre Dame's never had everything put together at the right time. Back when we were having like Brady Quinn and Jimmy Clausen, there was other massive holes in the team that prevented us from, going all the way. This is, I think, on paper, our best team in a long time. Like if you look at the roster, and the fact that we have an elite college quarterback now, and that's one thing Notre Dame's been missing, in the Brian Kelly era, was really an elite college quarterback. We have that now, but now the defense is looking a little bit shaky the last couple games. It's going to be interesting to see. I do think this is our best chance to beat Ohio State in like forever, but that doesn't mean that it's an automatic win. Like, yeah, some of these other people are saying. I guess the one good thing about this week that I can kind of take away and feel okay about is like at least Notre Dame didn't have the kind of day that like Alabama and Georgia and Florida State and a lot of these other teams had. Like they were looking rough, to say the least. Especially, I would say Alabama. Like, yeah, Florida State. I mean, Boston College is not a good team this year, so that was not a good performance for them. But I mean, Alabama scoring 17 points on USF with two different quarterbacks. That was pretty rough.
Yeah, and that 17 points, that's a bit of a stretch. Like
right,
they won the entire game with 3 points.
That's true. Yeah, they kind of pulled away, quote unquote, pulled away at the end with some the running game, like doing all the heavy lifting
against South Florida.
Yeah, that was an ugly game.
That is the worst Alabama performance under Nick Saban, at least going back to his second season.
Right.
I would argue that with anyone because I can't recollect a time that they played that poorly against a bad team. They got blown out in the national championship game by Clemson by 28 points, but they're playing a historic team, a historic quarterback. They're playing a lousy team today.
Yeah, they really were. And, and it wasn't just Bama either. I mean, the SEC continues to kind of look bad. I mean, Georgia, Georgia was losing to South Carolina for much of that game, and it really took everything they had just to win by, 10 points?
Yeah, well, that's the SEC playing itself, though.
Yeah, true, but it's an unranked South Carolina squad, too. So it doesn't, just because they're unranked, I understand that doesn't mean they're a bad team. I'm not saying they're a bad team. We saw what they did last year against Tennessee and Clemson. So, I mean, it's not the same exact roster, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, it was still expected that Georgia would go in there and kind of, have a pretty decent win by a lot of people. I'm not saying it was a universal opinion, but yeah, they looked pretty rough as well. So. What do you think was the most impressive win this week?
Most impressive win, Florida.
Oh yeah, I would actually probably agree with you on that. I have to call myself out. I didn't give Florida a chance on that one. I mean, I know it's a rivalry game, but I predicted Tennessee to win.
I won't say I didn't give Florida a chance, but I'll say I didn't think twice about picking Tennessee. I didn't mull it over or anything. I just went Tennessee, cover the 5.5, done.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, rivalry games are great for that reason, because, a lot of times the underdog can win, even if they're unranked or having a bad year. It's kind of weird how rivalry games go. I mean, I don't need to tell you, watching the game every year, but, yeah, it's a very interesting week. I would say none of the top performers really just, blew the lid off, except for, Ohio State had a pretty dominant game. But again, that was against Western Kentucky. Nothing too impressive in terms of the quality of competition there. But yeah, we'll have to wait till next week. There's going to be a lot of hurt people one way or the other when that Ohio State Notre Dame game happens. I'll be watching. I'll be back probably. So I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm a big boy. I can take a loss. I'm not going to run away. So if that indeed happens, we'll see.
I thought going into the season that Ohio State was somewhere in the 65 to 70 percentile of being assured a win in this game, but I don't think it's that now. I think it's more of a coin flip.
Yeah. Well, we do have I mean, we played Ohio State really well last year, and that was with Buckner, and we just didn't. Again, we didn't have good quarterback play. But you guys weren't 100%. That was a very early. I think that was the first game of the year last year. So neither team was exactly rolling and had their had everything going for them at that time. But that was in the Buckeye Stadium. So this one's going to be at Notre Dame. It should be a little more interesting with Sam Hartman again having an elite quarterback. I mean, if our defense plays as well as they did against Ohio State last year, we definitely have a pretty good chance to win. And we have Sam Hart and Benjamin Morrison in the back. You know, they're a pretty good tandem back there. It's just our front line, the defensive line, is just not impressing this year. Really, just the defense as a whole, and I think a lot of that has to do with our coordinator. I'm not going to throw him completely under the bus, but I'm not a huge fan of what I've seen so far this year. And Marcus Freeman is, he's obviously the one that's ultimately got to answer for the coordinators. But yeah, the defense needs some work. So I don't know that we're even going to play you guys as good as we did last year. But if we do, we definitely have a good chance to win. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And it's the cool thing, I think, for Ohio State is you guys were kind of like, I think, wondering a little bit about McCord for the first couple games of the year, like what's going on here. He's not looking all that impressive. Well, he looked pretty impressive today. He made some really good throws today.
Yeah.
Some really good throws. So it might be a pretty fun quarterback battle next week.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
I think Ohio State fans are hoping that basically by giving him the job and all the reps in practice, that was a breakthrough for him to not feel like he's in a quarterback competition and he's only splitting the reps in practice, that bam, he's the guy, he's getting all the first team reps and it's his team. And now he can kind of cut it loose.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% right. But that was good talking to you, Mark, and I'll let you go. You probably got a couple other callers, so
we do.
Look forward to next week. Yep,
absolutely. Call back. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, we'll do.
All right, folks. If you're going to the game, Ohio State, Notre Dame, or whatever the game is for you coming up next week, and you're just thinking about, hey, why don't I try to get it out to the stadium here in the next week or two? Well, we can save you a few bucks. You go to ticketsmarter.com and you can save big on the game that you want to see. Get $10 off of an order of at least $100 or more. $20 off an order of at least $300. And again, that's ticketsmarter.com or on the TicketSmarter mobile app. TicketSmarter's technology gives you the most competitive pricing on the secondary market. Your purchase with TicketSmarter is safe and guaranteed. And again, the promo codes that you use are BIG, B-I-G. That gets you $10 off. Or if you spend at least $300 for $20 off, your promo code is BIG20. BIG and BIG20. Go to ticketsmarter.com. Think smarter. Ticket smarter. All right, Jeffrey, what's going on tonight?
I'm doing good. I've got North Carolina on tonight because the Tar Heels, my home state, they look good. They weren't perfect. Drake May, he had 2 interceptions. One that was probably the worst throw of his career. I don't even know what he was doing on that one throw that he was about to get hit, and he just threw it right to the defender. There was no one over there. But besides that, he threw for over 400 yards. So I can't really complain about the performance. They're 3-0. I mean, are they going to be a favorite to win the ACC? Still probably not, but I am liking what I'm seeing from North Carolina. They were good today. Indiana, because I know people want me to talk about Indiana. They were this close. Why in the fourth quarter of that game did they not sneak the ball at the goal line? They're at 4th and goal at the half. I've seen this before. You never run the ball to your little running back 10 yards behind the line with a weak O-line. It doesn't make any sense. Indiana could have tied the game. But I think this does prove Indiana's not bad. Their defense was bad early, but they got it together. Didn't even give up a point in the second half. Taven Jackson threw for 300 yards, showed promise, threw a touchdown pass. They probably won't be a bowl team, but this isn't a bad team. They're better than last year. That's for sure. But I don't know. Tom Allen, the play calling, I just don't get sometimes. He could have had a shot to win that game.
Yeah, so I didn't see any of that, but I read the box score and I read the recap and saw, hey, I saw 21-0, and then I thought, Mark, you idiot, you picked Indiana to cover the spread.
So
But they came back. They scored the 2 touchdowns. They came back, and then I read the recap that there's 4 minutes left in the game. They drive all the way down the field. They've got a 4th and inches at the goal line, and Tom Allen's asked about the call after the game. Why didn't you sneak it? Why did you hand the ball off 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage? And he made some kind of an excuse to basically say, you got to execute. You got to block the play. And if you don't block the play, it doesn't matter what play you call. It does matter what play you call.
It does. That's what I'm saying. Tom Allen, I think he's a great guy, fantastic, people person. But when it comes to those certain plays that you got to make to win games, he's got to be toward not the top part of college football in the coaching ranks of that. He's made a lot of mistakes, but hey, I will admit it was good. What kickstarted that comeback though was because of the fact that they went for an onside kick right out of the gate in the second half, and they got it, and that's what jump started. Like I said, I don't know if they'll be a 6-win team, but I think Indiana is looking pretty solid, and possibly they could, maybe be better next year if a lot of these guys stay. Because Jalen Lucas will be a year older. Taven Jackson will be a year older. Not giving up on this season. They still could get to 6 wins, but they looked okay. And that's about all I can say about Indiana. I know Sean Garner in private chat saying I'm carpetbagging. I'm not. Yeah, and I know you're kidding. I mean, legitimately, Mark knows my backstory here. Again, family loves Alabama, so I got to talk about them. Whoa. Alabama, the worst performance I've ever watched in my life with my own eyes. Because I was a toddler when they played UL Monroe in the first season. So I've seen Alabama in 2009. That's when I started watching them as a kid. And, they won the title that year over LSU. And, McElroy and then McCarron, it was great. And then from now, it just awesome stuff from Alabama. And then now you've got this. And I agree. I've seen a lot of people in chat say Bryce Young masked a lot of the issues Bama had. And I agree 110%. Because I was telling my family this because they were like, no, Alabama's still really good. I'm like, you sure about that? The penalties, you're making mistakes. You're just not as crisp as you used to be. You're not giving up 10 yards rushing to Leonard Fournette. Now you're giving up 200 yards on the ground to a mediocre Florida team. Like, there were things that were masking, that were showing themselves, popping up with Bama the last couple of years. I'm like, they're not as good. And it was hard to explain that to it, but they get it now. And it was bad. South Florida. I mean, for me, I feel like Jalen Milroe has to be the guy. And I know that's not fair to Ty Simpson because he's young and he could get better. And he made a couple good throws. But Milroe has that talent. He's like Anthony Richardson in the fact that he gives you that upside to run the ball down the field 50 yards. He gives you that deep threat ability. Yes, sometimes he makes bad throws and bad reads. But I feel like Milroe gives Alabama the best chance to at least be okay this year. And okay for Alabama is blasphemy, but at this point, this is about all you can expect with the way that they're playing. And like you said, with the coordinator hires not going well, Saban usually knocks those out of the park. It's just not looking that great. I just think Milroe has to be the guy that starts. And I got, some pushback from that. Some people, disagree with me, and my family and others said that Simpson just needs a shot. And again, maybe with more playing time, he'll be the guy. But I think for now, Milroe needs to start again.
Yeah, and like I told the other caller, I just think you have to be very precise with the way you call plays, and you drill it into his head that he's not going to a second or third target, that he just is going to be designed to throw to one guy. He's not making reads or progressions downfield, and then you stick to that. And if nobody's open, if that guy's not open, then he takes off and runs, and that's your offense.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. I mean, the play calling's terrible when you've got a guy that can scramble down the field and he needs to have easier throws, routes that are, very unlikely that things could go wrong. Not have passes up the middle of the field where you've got zone defense and he sees that guy open and then a guy just comes over and picks it off. It's just terrible play calling when Milroe is in the game. And Mike says in chat, and he says, why Milroe, if that's the case, why pull Buckner from the portal? Well, you got to realize that Buckner lost his job at Notre Dame to Sam Hartman, and Tommy Rees went to Alabama. It makes sense why they got him. It's just he's not playing that great, and whether it's the play calling or whatever, I don't know. I just think Milroe gives Alabama a chance to win most of their games, not all of them, but I don't know. It is what it is. But off Bama, because no one, I mean, people care about Alabama, but people are happy to lose it too. I know that. So, I mean, I'm not happy about it. I mean, it's kind of cool in a way seeing Alabama, I guess you would say, trying to learn, because for me, I'm just used to them winning and stuff like that. It's kind of like Indiana always loses, Alabama always wins, and then Carolina's the team that you just can't figure out. Now it's like Indiana's getting a little better, and Carolina and Bama are both weird. So it's crazy.
And we should also understand that Alabama's loaded with talent, and Nick Saban knows what he's doing. And so don't be surprised if they're vying for a Western Division championship.
They could. I mean, it's not impossible, especially if they can get the right quarterback in there.
Still lost one game.
I 100%
one out
agree.
of conference game. So
that Florida State Boston College game though, I saw some of that and I was like, man, this is insane. Like Florida State, like they look like everyone's crowning them CFP. And granted, there's weird circumstances with that game and everything, but wow. I mean, like you said, Boston College had 18 penalties and they win by 2. And Florida State is just blowing everyone out here, and they're third, and they're some people's best team in the country. And then they do that, and then Texas, they beat Wyoming, but they weren't super impressive. It was a tie game for a while, or they were like the 10-7 or whatever. So I don't know. I think that a lot of these teams are very flawed. Like most years, teams are very flawed, but I just feel like that the competition at the top is a lot more narrow this year. You don't have that wide gap where it's like, okay, these 2 or 3 teams are way better, and then everyone else. It seems like it's about 7-8 teams that realistically are close to each other. Even Georgia doesn't look elite, which is great for
like that
competition.
At this point. Yeah, so let's hope that continues. But it seems that way. We've got a lot of top teams that have yet to play anybody. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State to a certain degree, to be able to really see that. And how good is South Carolina in terms of a test for Georgia? So, yeah, I think that what we watched in the swamp with Tennessee and Florida is that
was my next segue.
That's going to be fun. That it's going to be it's more unpredictable, at least at this stage of the season, than it's been in a while.
Which, like you said, and me as well, I think it's awesome. And that was, like I said, the next game I was going to talk about really quick. I almost picked Florida. No joke. I almost did. I picked Tennessee to win by 3 points. I was so close picking Florida. Like, it's in the swamp. Florida barely ever loses to Tennessee. They've got the historical track record. I know they're bad, but it's going to be at home at night. It makes a difference. But I'm like, Tennessee's going to pull it out. And then I watched the first half of that game, and I was like, wow. Florida is legitimately going to go out there and play like this, but then they're probably going to have a couple performances later in the year where they're awful again. And especially if they're on the road. And it's like, that shows you how important the home field advantage is. And when you're playing a rival, it just makes a difference. I mean, if Florida was at Tennessee, I don't think they win. I don't think they play like that because it's in Neyland. I mean, they're in the swamp. That crowd, it was insane. That was the best swamp since Tebow, you could argue, at moments of that game. How loud it was. It was ridiculous on the TV. And they played great. And like I said, Florida looked awful against Utah. Grant, that's the opposite effect. They're on the road in Rice-Eccles with that home crowd week 1. But I don't know. I mean, Florida could go 6-6 still, but that was impressive. But I almost picked them because I knew they'd play good. But I didn't think they'd actually pull it off, though. I should have picked them.
Yeah, emotion and momentum in sports is a big thing, especially with 18 and 19-year-olds. No doubt about that. So for as impressive as Florida was, expect them to play some more clunkers. And for as down as Tennessee was for most of that game, expect them to come back and be really, really good. But I do think that they missed Jalen Hyatt and they missed Cedric Tillman on offense. I think that's pretty noticeable. And they missed their best offensive lineman, Cooper Mays.
Yeah, those losses really do add up, especially when you're playing a game like that in that environment. I'm sure you got tons of people behind me. A couple more things I wanted to touch on. You already mentioned it, but Phil Jurkovec. I watched that game after Florida was getting out of hand, and I was like, oh, man, this guy, I missed you, Phil Jurkovec, when you were at BC as a freshman, throwing for a lot of yards. Like, I was thinking DJ Uiagalelei was almost turning into that for a while, but then he goes to Oregon State, and he's good to go. But, man, and even Penix, when he was at Indiana, he was starting to get shaky with his injuries, and he goes to Washington, he's all right. I was hoping for Jurkovec he'd have a turnaround like that. Not happening. 10 of 32, like you mentioned. And I was giving Cincinnati the benefit of the doubt because I picked Pitt to win this game. Because I was like, Cincinnati, they're decent, and then they lose. And I was like, uh-oh. So then Pittsburgh plays even worse. He throws 3 picks, only completes 8 passes in the entire game for less than 100 yards. And he looks timid out there. I don't know if it's because he's still thinking about injuries or, like you said earlier, that this offensive scheme is poor. And it was a good environment. I mean, not the Swamp was elite, but not going to lie, Country Roads was not bad tonight. The crowd was really good, and it maybe will save Neil Brown's job for now. But Phil Jurkovec, if that was freshman version of him, Pitt wins that game, even with the bad O-line. He was that good with a bad BC O-line in his freshman year.
Absolutely, he was. So, yeah, I would like to see the Phil Jurkovec that I saw, that first season for sure. All right, Jeffrey, appreciate you being here. I better get to these other calls.
One last thing I was going to say. I did laugh when the guy brought up about Sacramento State beating Stanford. It was his former team. He failed to mention that. That's what made it funnier.
Troy Taylor. Yep. Yes, those are the guys.
He lost to his former team, but cannot wait for the Week 4 games.
Yes, he recruited the guys that.
That's what I mean. I was trying to spit it out real quick. Yes, he coached. That was crazy that he coached. That's what I meant. Sorry. But thanks for having me on. Like and subscribe to Mark Rogers.
Appreciate it, Jeffrey. Thank you so much, man. This is my favorite comment of the night. These are the kind of people that I would love to call because I want an explanation. I want to hear this. So College Game Day is better than me. I would hope so. They put slightly a little bit more resources and effort and have like 40 people working on the show. So I would hope so. If they're not, they're complete and utter failures. So that would be one thing. And then I'm better than Putin. I would hope so. Slightly better looking. Maybe. I don't know. We could take a vote on that. Maybe it's really close. All right. Let's keep it rolling. We got Matthew on the line. Matthew, what's going on tonight?
There we go. You can hear me now.
Yes, we got you.
But just a weird night. It's funny because if everyone put money on the games, Vegas probably lost a lot of money because everyone I heard said, oh, this is a week upset, this is a week upset, this is a week upset. And if they just bet the spreads on these games, I mean, every game that was supposed to be a blowout turned out to be for the underdog. I mean, I watched Texas struggle with Wyoming on. Mark, you had to watch it, right? You got the Longhorn Network. Everyone's got the Longhorn Network. Yeah.
Well, I used to be forced to watch it to a certain extent, but no, I don't even know where you could possibly find that these days.
I had to do some certain things to be able to watch this game. That's all I'm going to say.
Is this the one game on per year?
It is. Thank God. Okay. That's the last game that will ever be on this network. And I was able to watch it. It was just bad first half. I mean, we go into the fourth quarter tied 10-10 versus Wyoming, and then we rattle off 21 points in a row and kill them. And I will say this, the Texas team 2 years ago probably loses that game. Honestly, Jalen Ford, best player on defense, surrounded the team up, head in the fourth corner, basically just started yelling at them. So that did work. They scored 21 points in like 7 minutes into the fourth quarter. I was like, oh, well, we're going to win now. I don't have to worry about it. But I was afraid, Mark, that I was going to have to come on here and after beating Alabama, losing to Wyoming. But honestly, after watching everyone else this week, I don't feel that bad. There's only like 3 to 4 like top 25 teams today that played like really well. Your Buckeyes played pretty well. Washington played very well. I'm trying to think who else played well. I mean, Georgia was slow. Michigan didn't look great. I mean, it was just a weird week, honestly. And then Colorado's losing to Colorado State right now. So I mean, it's just weird. And last time I checked, Kansas and Nevada were tied in the third quarter late.
Yeah.
So
Nevada,
like,
one of the worst teams in the country.
yeah. So after Jalen Daniels and Kansas beat the crap out of Illinois. So it's just weird. I don't know what to think of it. Honestly, I'm kind of inclined to think none of this really matters this week is where I'm leaning. Like, this is kind of just a throwaway week for me. I don't know, because it's just weird. I don't think Alabama's as bad as we watched today. Maybe they are. And if they are, it's because Tommy Rees does not know how to call plays and adapt his offense.
If Alabama's as bad as they played today, they're going like 4-8.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't think, I think at worst, no, they're not that bad. At worst, I think Darrell may be right. I think 7-5 is definitely on the table. I think that's the worst they could possibly go. I still think they're probably a 9-3, 10-2 team because, I mean, other than LSU, and that game's at home, that's the reason I wouldn't pick LSU. Honestly, like I said, I'm still going to pick, if I had to pick one, A&M. I don't even think, like, Ole Miss today didn't look great. I mean, they pulled away late, but they didn't look great early versus Georgia Tech. It's just weird. I don't know what, like, your overall opinion of this week is so far, and, like, who do you think the best team is that you've seen through, 4 weeks, 3 weeks?
The best team that I've seen on one day is Florida State, followed by Texas. That's the best team that I've seen perform at their highest against a good team. But the best team overall, I hate to say it's Michigan, because they've played just 3 horrible teams. So how can you rate a team as the best that you've seen that hasn't played anyone? So, we're looking at conference championships and we're looking at teams that are going to be playing in playoffs. So we want to look at teams at how high they can possibly get at their very best. So that's why I'm still on Florida and Texas as being, not that I believe they're the best teams, but they've played the best. We've seen the best out of them.
Yeah, we've seen the best out of them against quality competition, so I would agree with that. But, like, just based off of, not even, like, if you're taking that out of account, I think Washington, honestly, I mean, their offense is very good, and Michael Penix is underrated. I don't know.
He's underrated?
To me, yeah, I don't. Before this year, people did not talk about him. They didn't. Last year, they were not. They
really?
Put Caleb. I didn't think so. I don't think the national
Maybe I'm
media,
too entrenched in college football, because I don't think anybody's underrated, because I pretty much track everyone. So Michael Penix, I've known about Michael Penix since 2020. Like, this is the 4th year of Michael Penix. Well, 2019. I've known about Michael Penix for 5 years. So
I guess it may come down for the NFL mock drafts that I see then, because I see like him as like the 5th ranked quarterback, and he's not the 5th ranked quarterback. Like, if I'm going to say this right now, I would rather have Michael Penix than Quinn Ewers. I would. Quinn Ewers is way too freaking inconsistent for me. The guy went 9 of 18 in the first half versus Wyoming. Michael Penix isn't doing that. He's not. So I like Quinn Ewers. I think his and this is where NFL teams are going to overdraft Quinn Ewers, because you know how they think, Mark. They think, oh, if I get my hands on him, then I can change him. When he's great, he is great. We saw the top end of Quinn Ewers in the 2 games versus Alabama. When he's bad, he is god awful. He was bad tonight. He was 11 of 21 versus Wyoming. Last year versus Oklahoma State, he was under 45%, or he was at 45% completion. When he's bad, he's god awful. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in the country when he's bad. He's so inconsistent. I would rather can you give me your C+ game every week? Because if you have your C+ game in the Big 12, what is this year, versus with our team, we're running. I mean, the Big 12 is terrible. We'll run through it if Quinn Ewers can just be C+ the whole year, honestly.
Is this statistic on the screen correct, that Washington had 713 yards of total offense tonight?
I know Michael Penix had 330 yards passing in the first half. That's probably right. Michigan State's god awful. But yeah, that's still insane.
They did. They threw for 536. They ran for 177. Wow. Yeah. And Michigan State only had 261.
Yeah, I took Washington. I thought they'd win that game.
They tore them to shreds. 35-0 at half.
Wow. Yeah, I took Washington with the points on that one. They're just not. Michigan State's. What's their schedule look like? Because will they win another game?
Well, I even though I expected Washington to kill them, I took them to cover and all that. Didn't even think about it much. I thought Michigan State was better than losing 35-0 at half and giving up if Penix plays the rest of that game and they just run their offense,
he's throwing for 800 yards.
Yeah, they're pushing like 900 yards of offense. They've got Maryland next week. Does Michigan State? They've got Iowa after that. At Rutgers, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska. So they've got a shot against Rutgers. I guess they've got a shot against Nebraska and Indiana, maybe.
Yeah,
they might turn out to be the worst team in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But do you see like how bad is the bottom of the Big 12? I mean,
yeah,
Iowa
what
State
happened
lost to
tonight.
Ohio. I think didn't Cincinnati lose to Miami of Ohio?
Yes.
Oh my God dang. Yeah, it's bad at the bottom. Oklahoma State they didn't get beat. They got destroyed by South Alabama.
Yeah, I don't know what the spread was on that game, but I thought, okay, this is a tough spot for Oklahoma State because South Alabama was good last year. I expected them to be good this year. They played a decent game against Tulane. Like, I'm not surprised by the loss, but they got, like, it was like 23-0 at half or something like that.
Yeah, preseason wise, I may have put Oklahoma State too high. I think I had them finishing 9th. I don't know if they'll finish 9th. I think obviously Houston, Iowa State, and Cincy are better, but they might finish. They'll probably finish 11th or 10th. Honestly, West Virginia I think is better than them.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting. Honestly, the only 3 teams I'm confident in the Big 12, like being ranked at the end of the year, if Kansas can pull this one out, I still think Kansas is a good team. I think it'll be Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas because the rest of them, maybe Kansas State, but Baylor's not that good. I'm trying to think who's the 4th best team in the Big 12 or 5th best, I guess.
So we're saying after Texas, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Kansas State,
Kansas are the top 4 in my opinion.
I would say after those 4, it probably drops to TCU, right?
Yeah, or Texas Tech, maybe.
Or Texas Tech.
Yeah. But there's a big drop off after, if you want to conclude, I'll give Texas Tech 5th. There's a gigantic drop off. TCU's not that good either.
Well, Texas Tech almost beat Oregon last week.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would put them those are the top 5. I don't know what order.
And Wyoming's performance tonight almost substantiates them beating Texas Tech to a certain degree.
Oh no, they're pretty good. And okay, so what I do like about the Longhorn Network, they're able to get like the most in-depth insight into what Texas coaches have to say. And the Texas coaches straight up told Longhorn Network, like, that defensive line and the defense for Wyoming is better than like a 4th of the defense in the Big 12. So they obviously respect them. But I mean, honestly, Wyoming if you put Wyoming in the Big 12, they might be like the 7th or 8th best team. They're definitely better than Iowa State and Cincinnati and even Houston, I think. So that's 3 right there. If you want to argue Oklahoma, I think they're better than Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Oklahoma State. Well, the last I saw, Arizona State was losing by double digits against Fresno State, and Oklahoma State beat them. So that's nothing.
Yeah.
BYU at least saved face today.
Yeah, that was a big win. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if I think there's more questions about every big team now than there was coming into this week. So I do agree with Jeffrey. I think this year's wide open. I don't think there's an elite team. It's going to be very interesting. And if you had to bet right now, Mark, who do you think wins the national championship just based off 3 weeks?
Wow. I got 3 teams in mind. I'm going to say, no, I got 4 teams in mind. I'm going to say Georgia.
Georgia? Who are the other 3 that you had in mind?
Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State.
All 3 from the Big Ten. That's fair. I mean, Penn State didn't look great today, but they look good enough. And then Ohio State's got some questions to be answered, but they haven't looked bad in any game.
And none of them have really played anybody.
Yeah.
Shoot, if you compare what Kansas did against Illinois versus what Penn State did against, Penn State's got a great defense. They've got a really good defense, and they've got the pieces on offense to be really good, but they're not, or they weren't today. That's for sure. They should have blown Illinois out. They got 5 turnovers. They got 3 consecutive turnovers close to the red zone and really didn't do much with it.
Yeah, no, they didn't. Yeah, they got pretty lucky, honestly, but it could have been way worse than it was. Altmaier, I just don't know. I understand why he transferred from Ole Miss, but yeah, do you think after that, I guess the next question, this will be my last one, where do you see the drop off? Like, do you think there's a big drop off after those 4 teams you named,
No.
or
Oh,
no?
no. I
No?
don't. No. It could be Texas, USC, Washington, maybe Oregon, Florida State.
By the way, Florida State got lucky that Jordan Travis did not get hurt, because if he did, I mean, their whole season's
they're
gone.
done. They got lucky that Boston College committed 18 penalties. Now, I don't know how legit those penalties were, because I only watched about the last 5 minutes because it got really interesting. But I had people online telling me that those were bad calls. Who knows? But I hate when a game ends like this. Florida State has the ball, trying to run out the clock. They get stopped on 3rd down. They're about to punt, 90 seconds left. We get to see a dramatic finish where Boston College has the ball, trying to kick the game-winning field goal, and there's a face mask.
Yeah.
I know the officials have to call it, but it doesn't have anything to do with actual football playing and who won the play, and that ended the game. And we never got to see what would have happened, BC with the ball, only needing a field goal to win the game.
Yeah, it's pretty bad when you commit the most penalties in the history of the school. That's what they did today. Yeah, and that's crazy that Florida State only beat them by a really bad team by 2 points with all that. That's pretty bad.
A team that beat Holy Cross by a field goal last week and lost to Northern Illinois.
Yeah, Northern Illinois just got beat pretty bad by Nebraska. So I mean, that's pretty interesting to me.
You know who has a pretty impressive resume at this point is North Carolina.
Yeah, they do. That was a dominant win today. It wasn't ever in doubt, honestly.
I don't know if it was dominant.
I mean, it wasn't ever in doubt, in my opinion. I always thought they were going to win that game.
Huh. I thought it was in doubt when it was 21-13 and Minnesota had scored 13 consecutive points, and they had the ball down in the red zone, and then their quarterback came out, and I don't know why they called a play to the end zone, and their backup quarterback threw one of the worst passes you're ever going to see in your life, and it was basically a fair catch in the end zone for an interception, and then they got trounced after that.
Yeah.
But anyway, they did control the game and win the game, but yeah, I thought Minnesota had a reasonable shot there, but nobody's looked good every time they've played good teams.
No.
And if they have, they've only played one good team. And if they have, it's Florida State, but then they played a crappy team and looked like garbage and could have lost the game. So nobody's got a complete resume, really. And if they do, it's Michigan, and they haven't played anybody.
Anyone.
So North Carolina would come as close to playing 3 good teams, not great teams, good teams, top 40 teams, and they won all 3 games. And actually, they beat the 2 Power 5 teams worse than they beat App State.
Yeah, I think this might be the farthest in the season in a while that you can't really tell anything about anyone, honestly. No. I don't think there's much to say about anyone yet. I think a lot of questions will be answered next week for the most part. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but this will actually be my last one. Today, right now, who wins the SEC West?
LSU.
Okay. So LSU versus Georgia. I'm assuming Georgia wins the East, which I think they will.
Yeah, I watched some of that LSU game today, and I know Mississippi State. Again, we could say this about everybody. They're not great. They're not very good. They're okay. Who knows where they land this year? They're probably a 6-6 team, but LSU blew them off the field, and I came away from that game, and that was before I saw Alabama struggle and thought, I think LSU is the best team in this division.
Well, if Jaden Daniels is that accurate all over the damn field, they're
yes.
I mean, he was insanely accurate today. I think he's at over 75% completion percentage.
30 for 34.
Yeah, that's almost 90%. That's insane. And Malik Neighbors had a game, but I mean, if he plays like that, they'll kill Alabama. But I'm not sure if
their pass rush today was devastating.
Yeah, I honestly think Mike Leach. I mean, obviously, rest in peace. That really hurt that program.
Yeah, it obviously did, because they have a tremendous quarterback, Will Rogers, and he's back, and most of their defensive production back. one of their best running backs who scored their only touchdown today back, or their first touchdown today. So they should be better than what they showed last week and this week. By the way, Colorado State still leads Colorado by a touchdown, and they've got the ball back. They've held this Colorado offense in check. Colorado State got wiped off the field against Washington State last week, gave up 50 points. They're not a good team. They're playing Colorado this week. And with everything that was said, and with Dion taking all that personal and hyping up his team and everything, I think we all expected Colorado was just going to go in there with a vengeance. They're at home. They've got a hyped up crowd, that they would just lay waste to this Colorado State team.
Honestly, I think there's like, if you ask people how to poll, would you rather watch the game or the end of game, post game handshake? I bet half the people would rather watch that, because there could be a fight after the game. Especially the way the game's being played, there could definitely be a fight. Which would be interesting.
I am fascinated that Colorado State has held up this well.
Yeah.
This is funny. This is funny. If Colorado would come out of the gate, shock the world, be the talk of college football, beating TCU and Nebraska, then lose to Colorado State.
Yeah. And then what if they beat Oregon next week? That'd be even funnier. Then it would be chaos. But guys, Texas Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Big 12 channel, Texas channel. I'll get more in depth to the Wyoming breakdown, and I'll also be talking to Big 12 opener versus Baylor. We should kill them. If we play like we did tonight, we won't. We'll still beat them because Baylor's bad. But be there, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, guys, Tuesday.
Yes, we will put up a banner at some point. People are visual people. It's Texas Tuesdays. It's at 7:30. Got a Texas channel, the Big 12 channel. Yes. And you got to join Matthew there. He loves taking shots from all of you. So if you want to take shots at Texas, that's fine.
3-0 for the first time since 2012. Wasn't pretty, but it's good, Mark. It's good.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yep, no problem.
Have a good night. This is tremendous right here. Colorado State leads the Buffs 21-14, 3 minutes left in the third, 2nd and 16 coming up. Buckeye Mike coming up as well. Buckeye Mike, what's going on?
Not much. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. What's going on tonight?
Oh, just relaxing for the night, taking it easy after 11-hour shift.
All right. Nice.
So I know everybody's kind of touched on them a little bit, but is Iowa State really that bad, or was Ohio just that good today?
Well, having not seen one play, I would tell you that Iowa State, much like last season, probably has one of the worst offenses in the country, for one thing. And we also have to remember that they lost their starting quarterback and their best running back because of the betting scandal.
I mean, realistically, that game should have been like 17-0. And it was funny listening to the game at work because the Ohio radio guys were like, it's been at least 40 years since Ohio's shut out someone. And then, boom, Iowa State scores a touchdown. They're like, well, there goes the shutout. And then, realistically, how bad or not good do you think Bama is this year?
This is, for one thing, months and months ago, when I saw that they were playing South Florida on the road, I thought, this has never happened before. Alabama has scheduled a group of 5 team on the road. But then my next thought was, okay, this is about the only place they would go. They're going there for recruiting. I bet they're having recruits there. That's a good place to go. They obviously get much of their talent out of the state of Florida. But then I thought, okay, this is going to be just an annihilation. We know how bad USF's been for the last 4 or 5 years. And 3 points. They had 3 points until sometime in the fourth quarter, whatever time it was. I have no explanation for it. I have none. I didn't watch. So there was a big delay, weather delay. And then even when they came back, what typically happens is that there are union guidelines that don't allow the folks that run the cameras and the technical equipment to go back until a certain period of time after there was lightning in the area. So they have to shoot the game just from the top camera at the top of the stadium. That's the only thing they had. So you can really watch the game. And so I didn't try to watch the game from the top of the stadium. So I didn't see any of it, but both quarterbacks statistically were terrible. And again, if they would have had that performance against Ole Miss or South Carolina or a mid-level team in the SEC, I'd still be talking about how bad it was. But to do that against South Florida, like, I say this all the time about rewatching games. I don't have the time, but I would love to go back and just kind of filter through that game and just try to understand how were they not just physically dominating that game. Even if they're struggling at quarterback, there should be open wide receivers, like open to the degree that a low tier Power 5 quarterback should be able to hit the receivers, and so much running room that they should just automatically score points. I don't think anyone has any answer for you.
Well, I mean, so according to the guys on the Bama radio, like the guys that called the game.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's like a defensive line issue for Alabama, because they kept saying over and over repeatedly, even after Bama finally took the 10-3 lead, that they wouldn't be surprised if USF did beat them today, because somehow USF was winning the battle on the line.
Are you talking about the offensive line or the defensive line?
The USF offensive line winning the battle against the Bama defensive line.
Yeah, but they only scored 3 points.
Well, maybe it was the other way around. I can't remember.
I would think it was the other way around.
But yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like Saban's at this point just starting over, like he did in 06 or 07. And then
yeah, okay. Well, he's starting over with 2 different coordinators, but he's done that 10 other times and done it successfully. But yeah, you've got a point there, but he's not having to take over a middling team from somebody else like he did the first time around.
Right.
So this team's loaded with talent. That's all. We all know that.
Yeah, 100%. And then, so do you think Georgia is just kind of at the point where they're just kind of like sleepwalking through their schedule?
Maybe.
Or do you think, I don't know, do you think something's actually wrong?
Well, I think that you've got a new starting quarterback who had not played a decent team. And I think you had a veteran quarterback on the other side who's been around the block a few times. And you had Shane Beamer and his, I can't think of his new offensive coordinator since his old one went to Nebraska, Marcus Satterfield. Oh, shoot. Anyway, regardless, I think they put together a really good game plan in the first half. Now, those tricks run out after a while, and then you can only scheme around a bad offensive line for so long and absolutely no running game. And so that kind of ran out. And I think that Kirby probably kicked his team in the teeth at halftime and they were much more physical and decisive and dominant and just playing with fire in the second half. It was an impressive showing in the second half. They ripped off 21 consecutive points and shut out South Carolina. And probably the most overlooked portion of this Georgia dynasty is the offensive line. And Michigan wins Joe Moore awards, but Georgia's had the best offensive line in college football for the last few years, and they took control of the game. And where in the first half, Spencer Rattler was running for his life and he was finding lanes, and he was like dodging linebackers and safeties in the secondary and sticking his foot in the ground and making a miss and breaking tackles. And he was running like a wild man in the first half. They boxed him in and tackled him in the second half, and he had no chance. So I think that they have some things to work on, but they're loaded and really good. And maybe they just thought too much of themselves. Maybe part of it was they thought too much of themselves, but they also legitimately just had things that they needed to work out. And it took them a half, and seeing them down 14-3 on the scoreboard kind of gave them a bit of a jolt, and they responded.
That makes sense. And also to note, for Colorado State, apparently Travis Hunter's been taken out of the game and taken to the local hospital.
Oh, so, really?
Yep.
Did that just happen?
It says I got a notification about it 20 minutes ago.
Okay. Well, that's too bad. We will hope and pray that Travis Hunter is fine. Of
Absolutely. course. So last thing I wanted to touch on, and I think people in front of me have kind of touched on it. Honestly, I've looked at this Ohio State Notre Dame game this coming week. Notre Dame is built to beat Ohio State. That's obvious, kind of, at least. Like you mentioned, they have a good enough quarterback to finally do something like that. I think, like you said, giving McCord the nod was to kind of give him the confidence coming into this game. But I still think Notre Dame could do it. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, tough battle game. It's going to be like a 21-17, 2017, 17-14 kind of game, I think. Just with a quick evaluation. I mean, yes, our receivers are fast and everything, but I mean, come on. And then, what did you think about Michigan? I mean, to me, yes, they won against a Bowling Green team and only gave up 6 points. I'm shocked at how not dominant they've won every game so far. Like, the type of game that Ohio State played today is how both teams should have played all year.
But how many points is Michigan giving up? You don't think that's dominant? So they've been dominant on defense. There's no debating that. And today they didn't look good on offense. I didn't see one play of the game, but we had our Michigan guy call and tell me all about it. And looking at the stats, J.J. McCarthy threw 3 interceptions for what's got to be the only time in his career. I don't think he's thrown 2 interceptions except for the playoff game. They did run the ball well. They only threw 13 passes. They only ran 44 plays in the game. Now, the first 2 games against East Carolina and UNLV, they scored quickly. They scored a lot of points early, and then they just kind of cruised from there. So, yeah, they didn't play great, but they won 31-6, and they were never threatened. So I wouldn't be that concerned about Michigan.
Right.
Plus, their head coach wasn't there. So I don't know how much that's affected them. Of course, it's not like what the Urban Meyer situation was, where Harbaugh's not coaching the team for 3 weeks. he's there every day until the actual game. So that's a much different situation, but it's still different not to have your head coach. And so that's over with, and he's back. And they're playing a Rutgers team that's got a good defense. That's not in their class, not close to them, but they've got a really good defense. And we know 2 years ago that Michigan had a playoff team eventually, and they really struggled with Rutgers. So this might be worth watching.
I would agree. Now, last thing before I go, because I'm sure you got people behind me. One, what besides Braum leaving Purdue, what made the Purdue-Syracuse game tonight a lot different than last year? And how much time do you think that the West Virginia Pitt win for Neil Brown, how much time do you think it bought him? Because I still think that it could be a Les Miles situation where unless West Virginia gets to 6-6 to make a bowl game, I'm pretty sure he's done after this season.
Yeah. So to answer the Purdue question, they're a completely different team from a personnel standpoint. So, of course, they've got a new head coach, Ryan Walters. He's a first-time head coach. He did a remarkable job with the Illinois defense, but I don't want to put him in the same category as Jeff Braum. That would not be fair. So they've downgraded at head coach, at least temporarily. And they had one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten last year, Aiden O'Connell, and NFL weapons like Charlie Jones, and who caught 115 passes last year, and Payne Durham, who was one of the best tight ends in the country. And they don't have those guys now. So they have a much different look on offense. And Ryan Walters even said the entire offseason that they were no longer going to be that style of offense, a basketball on turf kind of offense, that they were going to emphasize running the ball and defense. They shouldn't be emphasizing defense because they don't have one. But Hudson Card's just a different quarterback. Now, I didn't see any of this game. I pulled it up on my laptop, but I was watching 3 other games at the same time. And so I really didn't see what was going on. But I did notice at halftime that Hudson Card had 4 turnovers. So he obviously, despite racking up some yardage, made a lot of mistakes. And on the other hand, Garrett Schrader, the Syracuse quarterback, had over 100 yards rushing at halftime. So that's obviously an issue for them because he tore them up last year as well. But Purdue's a much different team. They've got a different philosophy on offense. They've got a completely different type of quarterback, don't have as many weapons, and a different, inexperienced head coach. And then to answer your question about Neil Brown, this win's huge, but it's a win, meaning if it's only going to be the difference between going 4-8 and 5-7, then it's not going to buy him much time. But it's about the biggest win. Well, it's the biggest win that he's had at West Virginia. There's no doubt about that. And we'll see if this serves as kind of a breakthrough or momentum for them going forward now that they're going into Big 12 play. And now look at the Big 12 as well. Oklahoma State's awful. Baylor's looked pretty bad. Texas Tech hasn't looked great. Like there's group of 5 teams beating Big 12 teams at the bottom of the league on a regular basis. Well, you picked up the phone and started the call with Ohio over Iowa State. So maybe West Virginia's in better shape in the Big 12 than we anticipated.
I honestly, with family from West Virginia, both gone to West Virginia and Marshall, I do hope that West Virginia is closer to the middle of the pack in the Big 12. And I think that with the way it is this year and could be in the next few coming years, that hopefully that they stick right around at least the middle of the pack, that we're not towards the bottom.
So he's lost a non-conference game. And so if he goes 5-4 in the Big 12, that means he's going to go 7-5. I would think that would be enough to keep his job.
I would think so too. But, with the fan base constantly being so back and forth on him, I think, if he gets to 7-5, then I think, he's earned at least another year.
I would agree. All right, Buckeye Mike, I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Everybody, don't forget to use the link, subscribe to all the channels like I have. This guy is awesome. Everybody he has is awesome. And if you buy your tickets, use Ticket Smarter.
Appreciate that, Mike.
Thanks. Appreciate
Have a good night. All right. Blank name says, Mark, 2 years ago, Michigan's offensive line had some crazy stat that was something like Michigan only got tackled for loss 8 times the entire season. It was historically good. That's good for them. I said that they had a great offensive line. I just simply said it was not as good as Georgia's. And my best stat for that is go watch the playoff game in 2021 and evaluate Michigan's offensive line in that game and evaluate Georgia's offensive line in the same game. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Sean's on the line. Sean, what's going on?
I'm great. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing well. What's the good word?
Oh, not much. I'm just looking at my wounds over the Cincinnati loss to Miami. My auntie earlier tonight, but they play every year. They haven't lost to them since basically I can remember, like 2004, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, the thing Cincinnati just beat Pitt last week. This is what's crazy about this season. We've talked about it with a few different callers. These results, if you try to add them all up, they don't make sense.
No, they don't make any sense at all. Cincinnati as a program doesn't make a lot of sense lately. They pulled Satterfield from Louisville.
Yeah.
And that was a Matt hire, but that was a lot of hope. After after a couple weeks, they demolished Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky almost beat Kentucky the week next week.
Yep.
And then they dominated Pitt at Pitt's home field, and everything's looking up, and then they lose to this middling rival that they've had forever.
Yep. That lost their first game by 5 touchdowns.
Exactly. Nothing makes much sense, but going on with the other team that I follow that people are more closely follow more closely is Ohio State. This was a good game for them today.
Do people follow them closely?
No, not Ohio State.
Yeah.
No, do they?
Okay.
I would say Ohio State. I would say people follow Ohio State. People follow closely. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Proceed.
No, this was as good of a game. A tune-up game, like a get-right game today, as you could expect.
I agree.
Yeah, but it's hard to evaluate this game. It's like, did they play this well because they needed to, or is it because they're this good?
Well, those two things go hand in hand to a certain extent. We're all full of questions, all of us, about this college football season. And that's every season, but this one's a little different. I have to admit, and for as bad as Ohio State looked the first 2 games, they almost seem like the definition of stability now compared to a lot of other teams.
Oh, absolutely. You watch Alabama against South
my
Florida?
goodness.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, Colorado's not in the same category, but no, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, they came out, like, they executed very well. I mean, they gave up 10 points to an offensive juggernaut who almost never scores 10 points, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, were they just focused because they had, I mean,
Well, I don't take any negatives away from what happened today, whether they're just that flat out good and it just hit them this week. We know that they're one of the most talented teams in the country.
yeah.
But if they decided, okay, I think it could be a lot of things. It could be that they wouldn't necessarily beat what was the final score of this game? Like 56-10,
I think it
66-10?
was 63-10.
63-10. That they wouldn't defeat Western Kentucky by 53 points every time they played them.
No,
Maybe this was kind of a max effort. Maybe it's not. It's obviously not a shock to anyone that Ohio State beat Western Kentucky by 53 points, but I don't know that they would beat them by an average of 53 points. Probably be more in the 30-point range, like the point spread would indicate.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they really maxed out. They did force turnovers on defense that turned into points, directly or indirectly.
I think it was just one. They recovered
Well, I
fumble.
understand that, but that's why I say indirectly. They forced turnovers that their offense took the ball in really good field position.
Right.
And I do think, now we don't know this, it's impossible to know it, that Kyle McCord was more comfortable being the starting quarterback, not messing around thinking, when am I coming out of the game? How many reps am I getting? When is Devin Brown going to be in the game? Just, you're the quarterback. He got all the reps this week, all the first team reps. He's the guy. There we go. And I think that was a good decision by Ryan Day to make that decision the week prior and to have one full game going into Notre Dame.
Right. Absolutely. And I've also seen them, like, the last, like, 2 or 3 years, I've seen them tinker around with this I formation, go under center the first 2 or 3 games. And it always seems like it's a disaster. It never works. And then they abandon it, like, right away, like a couple games into the season, and you never see it again. I mean, have you noticed that trend at all? I mean, like, they didn't go under center at all this game, at all, not once.
I would like to see if they're going to do that, just completely buck trends and throw deep out of that formation. Like, I don't see what good that does them to show everybody their hand and eliminate one of their biggest advantages, and that's their wide receivers in space.
No, that's definitely one of their advantages. They can, they can get out in space, and Abuka and Harrison and Fleming and all them. Like, they can be anybody one. They can be any other matchups 1-on-1.
And maybe they give Notre Dame something else to think about with Cade Stover today too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like one thing I've noticed this year, they use a lot of their tight ends and their backs in motion a lot of the times, and they do a lot of rollouts, and they throw it to the empty guy 1-on-1 right there, and he can always get like 5 or 6 yards in that spot pretty much every time they do that. It's it's an interesting wrinkle that not a lot of other teams I see implement in their offense at all here. So
All right, Sean. Anything else you got for us?
Well, I'm good. I'm good. I
Thanks for the
appreciate.
call.
Yeah, good show, Mark.
Always appreciated, man.
Take care.
And we will let everyone know that we're going to do everything we possibly can to talk Ohio State Notre Dame coming up this week. And we know that's a game that most folks that watch us care about. But also, there's a ton of other great games. I think this is a loaded week. Alabama will misplay. Clemson, Florida State will be all over that. We'll do tons of previews. But I'm going to be here live or recording segments with others or providing my analysis on that game in particular. So look out. We will, there's not going to be just like one Ohio State Notre Dame preview. I'm just going to keep throwing it your way, and hopefully you guys will enjoy. Somebody just broke out into the open field. That would be Dylan Edwards of Colorado, as Colorado's down by 11. Did you see the CSU touchdown? That was pretty crazy. The great catch, great throw, and great run to the pylon to take an 11-point lead under 10 minutes. So this is intriguing. But Colorado's right back down the field and in the red zone. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. John's here. John, what's going on?
Not much. Watching this Colorado game. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, I guess my gripe is there's been 2 illegal blocking calls that they didn't show replays of. I was kind of confused on that because Norvell, was it Norvell?
Yes, Norvell.
He acted like he didn't know what the penalty was, and I was just kind of confused why they didn't.
Yeah.
They haven't shown either one of those replays.
I hate when they don't show replays. I think they should show replays of every play minus maybe a dive for 2 yards. Like, I want to see a replay. There's so much time between every play. I don't need to see guys standing on the sideline and the prettiest girl that the cameraman can find in the crowd or whatever. Maybe sometimes that's okay, but I want to see replays. Like, sometimes I think, was that a dropped pass or did the DB get a hand in there? And I don't get a replay. But especially penalties. I want to know what happened.
Yeah, they show the replay of things that benefit Colorado, but they don't show the replay of things that are questionable.
That doesn't surprise me.
But that leads my next point. Do you think? I mean, I'm sorry. I like Deion Sanders. I'm a Cowboys fan as well as a Browns fan.
Okay.
But I just think the media, the way that college football is hyped up, college football is the best football there is. It's better than the NFL. But let's let him do something against Utah, Oregon, USC before we start. I thought jumping them up in the 22nd after beating TCU was a bit much. But I don't need, the rankings. I'll just jump to that real quick. So people argue with me that the AP poll has nothing to do with college football, the playoffs, obviously. But I'm a believer that the AP poll does have an influence on where you're ranked at in the college football playoff. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with you. So the point, if I'm getting it from you, at least this is my point when people ask me, is that yes, technically it doesn't. If people were robots and they had no emotions and they weren't influenced by anything, yes, it has nothing to do with it. You have a completely different group of people voting for the AP. Then you have a completely different group of people who should be completely walled off from that, not consider it, not look at anybody else's opinions, and then they select the top 25 in their college football playoff rankings. But they get influenced. There is no doubt in my mind that they are influenced. I think all of us are influenced. And that's one of the reasons why I don't even look at the AP poll anymore. I have no idea what it like. I could guess what it is, but I don't look at it because I produce my own rankings and
I'm watching every week
to it.
Now, I am a Buckeyes fan, but I am a truthful Buckeyes fan. So when I seen your rankings that Ohio State wasn't even in the top 25, I'm like, that kind of hurts a little bit, but I understand it because we haven't played anybody.
You understand that I think Ohio State's one of the 25 best teams in the country.
Yes, but based off a resume,
not yet.
We're doing your rankings off a resume and what they've done and what they look like.
I think they're one of the 5 best teams in the country.
Yeah, which leads me to my next point. Do you think that it's almost time to get rid of the AP poll, or at least shake that up a little bit? Because, obviously you can't get rid of the AP poll, but you can shake it up or do something on how these teams are ranked. Because I think, yes, Ohio State struggled week 1 and 2, but they won. They won. And they fall down 2 spots. And then you got Alabama jumping Ohio State after, week 1.
Mm-hmm.
How's that look now? But then Alabama gets beat by 10, pretty much dominated in their own house.
Yep.
And only fall to 10. Now let me ask you this: how far would Ohio State fall? How far would Penn State fall if they went out of conference? Actually, we know that question. Oregon went into Ohio Stadium.
Yeah.
Was it 3 years ago? Beat us in our stadium. How far did Ohio State fall?
I can't answer that question. I'm
I think it was like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Bama falls. I mean, I think the AP poll is comical this year just because they're making themselves look like they don't know football. I understand it's a week-to-week thing, but Alabama doesn't look like a top 10 team even before this week. I think Texas is overrated right now.
And to your point, that's what that's supposed to be. So what I'm doing is different. I'm just rating based on the results on the field. But the people in the AP are doing something that I would release this as well, but I'm sure it would confuse people. I would release 2 and I'd say, this is my resume ranking, the top 25 that actually makes sense. And here are my rankings, what I personally believe are the 25 best teams in the country. And you'd see Georgia, Ohio State, regardless of who they played.
Yeah.
And that's what you would see. That's
kind of like like a knee-jerk reaction with the AP poll.
That's what the AP voters are doing. So it shows you that they don't know. They don't exactly know what they're doing. It depends on the person. Obviously, some are more competent than others.
Yeah.
That 13 of their preseason top 25 last year didn't finish ranked. You could almost throw darts at the map and do better than that.
Yeah. Now, you brought up Cade Stover with the last call. I wanted to touch on him. If Ohio State could implement him, and this call isn't just about Ohio State. If Ohio State could implement Cade Stover, I think he could be just as good. I can't remember the guy's last name, but the tight end for Georgia.
Brock Bowers,
yeah. I think he could be just as good and just as impactful as Brock Bowers.
That's a big statement.
But if you watch Cade Stover, look at him in the college football playoffs last year. When he went down, we were strictly relying on Harrison. And then Harrison got knocked out. And then it's like our offense was dead. Now the play calling was questionable. But Cade Stover in the open field, he's a bigger guy. So he's just as hard to get down to the ground. And he's got just as good as hand as Brock Bowers does. Now, Brock Bowers is better than him. I'm not saying he's Brock Bowers. But I'm saying as in scheme-wise, if they could figure out a way to get him involved like Georgia does with Brock, I think the offense would just be really hard to stop. Because at that point, you can't double Emeka, you can't double Marvin, because then you just got Cade Stover against the linebacker, and who's going to win that battle every time?
Yeah, Brock Bowers, to me, I decided after just watching him a couple games 2 years ago that he was the best tight end that I've seen in a while and the best in college football. Stover is a really good player. Now, I know when I've talked about him in the past, some people have noted that they don't think he's a very good blocker. Now, I'm not breaking down game film to know how good of a blocker he is. I know that he missed a few against Michigan and Georgia that I recall, and against Penn State. I remember they kept trying to throw these screen passes against Penn State in the first half, and the receiver, and sometimes it was Stover, it was usually a wide receiver, kept missing blocks. And so they kept getting thrown for losses in those games. But Yeah, Stover's a great addition to the passing game if they would utilize him.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see the last 2 weeks that he's been utilized a lot more. And one thing I like about the Ohio State receivers, Emeka got called for. I think it was Emeka got called for 2 holdings today.
Yep.
But it's like, what was it? Brock Heward, is that his name? Said,
yes.
At least he's blocking. You know, I don't know if that was kind of a shot to some of the other receivers that the Buckeyes have had because, you know, Olave wasn't known for his blocking. Garrett Wilson wasn't known for his blocking. But I like our group, and I've seen someone comment earlier about Michigan's defense is nasty. They haven't played anyone. Ohio State's defense looks all right. The turnovers are good, but you're playing 3 lesser opponents, and JT hasn't really made much of an impact. Jack Sawyer hasn't really made much of an impact. Michael Hall has made more of an impact than those 2. And JT's projected to go in the first round of the draft. So I think in order for our defense to be elite, they have to figure out a way to get JT and Sawyer to start producing. But my question, what I wanted to ask was, if Notre Dame, what would you have to see from Notre Dame if they beat Ohio State to believe? Now, do you need to see them to dominate Ohio State to make them like top 3 team in the country, and vice versa? Would Ohio State need to dominate Notre Dame to get that respect, or
from me?
No, well, anyone like you, the college football world, because right now neither one of those teams are getting much respect from college football, the AP poll and all that.
Well, going back to your first point, yeah, Ohio State has struggled the first 2 weeks, but won by 20 and 28 points. So some of their struggles, like Florida State truly struggled today. Florida State should have lost today. They were playing a bad football team that went 3-9 last year and played down to the wire against Northern Illinois, losing that game. And Holy Cross, like they truly played a bad team today, and they got pretty lucky. Ohio State struggled, like they didn't look pretty, throw for 500 yards, score 50 points, but they were never anywhere close to being threatened by either one of those teams.
Yeah, and it's like you said earlier with the whole quarterback situation and trying to get both quarterbacks the time. I think now that Kyle McCord is, like you said, knows he's the starter, and I also noticed Ryan Day opened the playbook a little more today. He was letting Kyle throw the ball deep down the field. It wasn't just like, you know, the first couple of weeks, the Ohio State's offense looked like Colorado State's offense. Just a bunch of drag routes, crossing routes, you know, and it worked against Michigan a couple years ago. But you're not going to really get a good feel on who your quarterback is if you don't let them throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
You know, we're trying to determine if it's Kyle McCord or if it's the other kid. I can't remember his name all of a sudden. You know, you got to let the man throw the ball down the field. But my last question before I let you go. Well, it's not really a question. I feel like Michigan could have 3 losses on their schedule because they got to go to Happy Valley, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Obviously, they got to play Ohio State. But I'll tell you a team, they struggled, was it last year? I think 2 years in a row, actually. I think Maryland might shock Michigan.
They could.
Because Maryland, they had a lead on Michigan last year, didn't they? And then blew it.
Your Michigan moose there. Yeah, I remember that game rather well. I watched all of it. Michigan wasn't like seriously threatened, like they had a 34-20 lead. They always had a 1-score lead, then had the ball, and then would make it a 2-score, and then it would go back to 1 score. It was one of those kind of games. But there's a few things there. Talia Tagovailoa got hurt late in that game, and the backup quarterback came in and played rather well. I can't remember his name for Maryland. Number one. Number two, there were some pretty fortuitous bounces for Michigan. Number one, Maryland fumbled the opening kickoff and basically handed Michigan the ball like the 7-yard line.
Yeah.
So they scored a touchdown on the first play of the game. It was 7-zip like that. The other thing was Maryland intercepted a pass in the end zone, and the dude's cleat came down on the sideline by about that much, and so it was called back. And Michigan scored right after that. They would have had a turnover. Michigan also had an interception in that game the ball was trapped. I don't know how in the world they gave it to Michigan. So it was a pretty tightly contested game.
Yeah. I mean, I just seen it. I have a buddy who's a Michigan fan. I rub the App State. Sorry, Michigan. What's his name? Michigan Man Moose. Sorry, but App State. I got to remind you guys every year. But he's worried about Maryland. He said that's the one team he worries every year since Tagovailoa has been there. But just one more quick question: with Georgia having to go to the swamp this year, do you think if Florida plays the way they did today, that they have a chance? Now they got really conservative in the second half, and you can't do that against Georgia. But do you think that they'd have a chance to beat Georgia? And does Georgia play LSU this year in the regular season?
Georgia, LSU, no. Georgia's 2 games against the SEC West are Auburn and Ole Miss.
Oh, okay. Are they doing away with the divisions like the Big Ten is when everyone joins?
They have not decided.
Okay.
They have not announced that. They decided, they gave us a schedule for next year, but they didn't go through all that. That's a great question about Georgia, because, man, it's a big stretch for me to think that Florida could beat Georgia, but of course they could. They could. Graham Mertz threw the ball really well tonight before he did something to his hand, so hopefully he's okay.
Yeah.
Man, these games, again, like a bunch of callers have said, and we've talked about, these teams they're riding a roller coaster. And that's been true in other years, but it just seems to be even more so because that Florida team that showed up at home with a home crowd and all that, and I know that's part of your point. Florida's at home for this Georgia game, or no, they got a neutral site game. They always play neutral site. Yeah, they always play in Jacksonville.
That's right.
So it's not a home game. So no, I don't think that they've got a huge chance. I'll give them about a 15% chance.
Yeah, I don't think ETN's going to be able to go off against Georgia the way he did today. And what did you think about was it Heichel? Is that his name?
Yes.
Calling that timeout at the end of the game.
Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to prove there.
Yeah, that seemed like a pretty bonehead move.
It got the players riled up.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you have to be understanding that you're coaching a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds, and I know that I was much more emotional then. And it's an emotional game. Like, we expect these guys, it's pretty crazy what we expect them to do. We expect them for 4 seconds to be ruthless in a sense within the rules, and then shut it off, and then do this over and over and over. And it's only understandable that, that's one of the reasons why sports is good for kids. It teaches them discipline, but it is difficult when you think we're teaching you to collide with somebody over and over and over, but then to shut that off and be a perfect gentleman, like once the whistle blows, and not push and shove after somebody just got the better of you or whatever happened during the play.
Well, I feel like the quarterback waited a little long. I know he was supposed to wait to knee it, but that guy was already coming at him, and then you can't, when you're that big, it's hard to stop.
Yeah.
Granted, and it's not like he demolished him, He bumped into him, but I think that's one thing that they should probably do away with is letting that happen. Like we had the Kenny Pickett fake slide.
Yeah.
And then they make some kind of rule on that. I think they could make a rule on waiting, because a lot of these times when that play happens like it did tonight, it's because the quarterback waits until that defender is already running at him, already committed to hitting them, and then they go down, and his knee never even touched the ground.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, Mark. I appreciate you letting me call
Thanks,
in here.
John. Good call. Appreciate it. Call back anytime.
All right, I will do.
All right. This is a great point by Annie right here. This makes total sense. And this tears away at the perception that we have that certain conferences are better than other conferences until it's proven on the field. Meanwhile, Colorado is making a mad dash to the end zone. They're inside Colorado State territory, down 8, $1:13 left, just got a first down. Just 2 enormous plays, like the kind of plays that you can't have against your defense when you're protecting an 8-point lead with 90 seconds left. Like, give up the 7-yarder, the 8-yarder, but the 35-yarder. So we got a flag on the field. It's probably against the offense, I would believe. So we shall see. 1st and 10 for the Buffs. Down 8, 1:05 left. They're into Colorado State territory. Illegal procedure against Colorado. Let me get to these super chats before I take the next call. Thank you so much for all of them, everyone. King Vegeta said, going back to the previous comment that I posted on the screen. Yes, the Pac-12 should be in play for 2 college football playoff appearances, for 2 teams to get into the play. That should not be unreasonable or anything. If the results on the field indicate that 2 of those teams earned it, then absolutely. King Vegeta says UCLA is going to win the Pac-12. Okay. Erica. It's great to have Erica back from vacay. And we hope you had a good time and got a lot of well-earned rest and relaxation. Here's my obligatory, please gently press the like button. Message, go Hawks. There we go. And Iowa scored points today. Did anyone notice? They scored. I didn't know that the scoreboard in Kinnick Stadium went past like 24. I didn't think that those lights operated correctly to do that, but they put up a big 41, and Colorado just completed a play for a first down, but it's coming back. Another flag. All right, then we've got Michael. Thank you so much for the contribution. I didn't really understand your comment earlier, but that's fine. Thank you for the contribution. I appreciate it. And it doesn't bother me that Game Day is ranked above the Voice of College Football, considering the budget's concerned. Hall of Fame City Gaming. May I have a call-in link, please? Hopefully we got that to you. Texas is overrated. Oh, Colorado has just scored a touchdown. Look at that. And so now we've got a 2-point play that is going to mean everything. Interesting. Okay. Thank you, Hall of Fame City Gaming. I will put the link in the chat here in just a second. Brian, Michigan is the best defense since 21 Georgia. Okay. Well, considering that only takes into account 22. Okay. We'll find out if you say so. I know they're not as talented as 21 Georgia. I will tell you that. All right. Welcome into Real. What's going on tonight?
Well, this is a very interesting game we got here between Colorado State and Colorado. Who knew? College Game Day chose an actually competitive game.
I did not expect Colorado State to stay in this game. They lost by like 4 touchdowns last weekend to Washington State.
I understand that, Mark. Are we going to get an instant analysis of this game?
We could get it right here. If I'd been watching it, yes.
So, Mark, I got to ask you. Missouri pulled it off against Kansas with a 61-yard field goal.
I know what's coming. Yeah.
How about the SEC, Mark?
Arkansas lost to BYU. Alabama struggled mightily against South Florida. That still just is hard for me to fathom.
Hey, I told you, Mark. I tried telling you 7-5 was on the table. I got called insane, crazy by everybody. But
you didn't try to tell me. You did tell me. Shoot. Colorado scored 28 all. Okay, here we go. We might have OT. So
Vandy
yes,
lost.
that's a really good win for the SEC. Beat a top 15 team, at least according to the AP poll that I could see on the screen, but not according to me. But yeah, it was a good win. It's a great win, 61-yard field goal. But then also Arkansas losing to BYU. Ole Miss did what they should do. That's neither, in my book, a plus or a minus for the SEC. It's just what should happen.
I agree.
And that was pretty much it for the weekend, right?
Vandy lost to UNLV.
Oh, did they? Okay, well.
They lost 40-37, but it's UNLV, and it's Vandy. So
yeah, it's almost, we don't even.
The people were dissing me in the chat saying, the SEC's bad because Vandy lost to UNLV. What's funny is Arizona State was getting absolutely crushed by Fresno State, but nobody wants to talk about that as well.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's part of it, but it's a very small part of it.
Exactly, Mark. And
Alex enjoyed the game. He says UNLV Vandy was a really good game.
Oh, it was. They both tried to lose the game, Mark. They both tried to lose, but apparently one team has to win in football. Oh, I think one team missed a field goal, another team threw an interception, another team fumbled it. Yeah,
that's what happens when these really awful programs get together. I don't think they realize that one of them has to win.
Right.
They're so used to losing every game that they just figure they're both going to show up and lose.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. But a team that definitely knows how to lose is Virginia Tech, Mark. Just to get completely blown out.
Yeah.
What is happening at Virginia Tech, Mark?
Rutgers doesn't blow out anyone. Yeah, that's pretty bad. They did start a freshman quarterback because their starting quarterback was hurt, but their starting quarterback's no good either. So I don't know that really mattered. Actually, this guy may take over. His name's Kyron Drones as the starting quarterback from Grant Wells because he can actually run around and do something on the ground. Yeah, Justin Fuente, he took over a good program from Frank Beamer, who earlier, of course, had made that a near great program, but it wasn't quite the program that it had been under Frank Beamer, but it was still top 25 program. Justin Fuente took it over, was able to coach it well for 2 years, and then he went under 500 after about his third game of his third season and brought in recruiting classes like in the 50s and 60s. And basically, this is what Brent Pry has to work with. It's a horrible team.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Now, speaking of horrible teams, we got to talk about Oklahoma State. I threw out some names on the hot seat. Can we add Mike Gundy to the hot seat?
Oh, come on. Leave Mike Gundy alone.
He's been losing by 26 points to South Alabama.
He's been way too comfortable for too long. I think he's past being on the hot seat. He can never be on the hot seat. He's got a lifetime guarantee at Oklahoma State.
So if they go 1-11, 2-10, I guess 2-10.
One season.
Last year they weren't great either.
Well, they went 7-6.
Yeah, but I mean the wheels kind of completely collapsed there at the end, Mark. I'm just saying they struggled against Arizona State, who is really bad. They struggled against Central Arkansas, who is really bad, probably.
Yes.
They got blown out by South Alabama, who's a group of 5 team.
He's had a nice run, and you can't boot him after one bad season. And the Big 12 so bad that maybe he won't even have that bad of a conference season. Who knows who's going to win those games when all those teams get together?
Right. Can we at least admit the Big 12 is the worst conference out of the Power
I
Five?
know you said that last week, and now I think after this week's games, I tend to agree with you.
I was going to say hopefully the bad losses just kept piling up enough to where Texas beating Alabama isn't that impressive anymore. Hopefully losing to Miami of Ohio, South Alabama, Rice, Texas State, Wyoming, struggling against Sam Houston.
Wish we could have seen Oklahoma try to beat someone decent. They played
Yeah,
absolutely no one.
It's their fault for not scheduling anybody good. Or them going to the SEC and then Georgia and Oklahoma canceling. You know when Colorado State, I think, lost this game, made this game in doubt, was when it was 4th and 1 with like 3 minutes to go and they didn't go for it.
Oh, yeah.
They were gashing Colorado the entire game. I mean, you're the road dog. You've got all the momentum on your side. You just need that first down, and you can basically drain out the clock. I don't know why they punted it there.
Well, they just punted with 14 seconds left, and what I didn't understand before this was they knew that they weren't going to get the first down, and the wide receiver ran straight out of bounds. I don't know why he didn't just keep the ball in play, but I guess it wouldn't have mattered. It would have at least forced Colorado to use a timeout. Anyway, there's 7 seconds left. So Colorado's, I guess, going to throw a Hail Mary or throw a hook and ladder and 18 laterals after that.
Well, you don't do the laterals if you're tied, Mark. Did you watch the Raiders-Patriots game?
I do remember that. That was something else. Yeah. That was a tie game.
Yes, that was a tie game. You don't throw laterals in it when the game is tied.
If you're Colorado, you just run the ball up the middle. So they're going to overtime.
Now, what does this tell you about TCU and Nebraska? I thought Nebraska was going to a bowl game this year, Mark.
The rest of the Big 12 has told us the TCU is no good, and Nebraska, we know Nebraska's no good until further notice.
Do you know how the Pac-12 people called the Big 12 the island of misfit toys? You remember that?
People do, yes.
I would like to say they're not even there yet. They're in parts and assembly. They haven't even been made yet to be toys. They're just kind of there scattered all around waiting to be assembled. I mean,
if I'm not mistaken, the conference's Power 5 record is still better than the SEC's.
Yeah, but I doubt their Group of 5 record is better than the SEC.
No. Their Group of 5 record looks like the Pac-12's does most years.
Right. It's just embarrassing and bad. And Mark, I got to ask you about Boston College, Florida State, because I've been ripping on Boston College for the last 3 weeks, saying they're the worst team in the Power 5. And they almost beat Florida State. Now, did Travis Hunter, I saw he went out in the second quarter. Did he stay out for the rest of the game? Did they update and say he was hurt and then he had mobility issues or anything like that? Or
I don't know. I've been right here with all of you talking about everyone else, and I've got the game on in front of me, but I don't know.
Okay. Because it doesn't make any logical sense to me why Jordan Travis or Florida State would be that close to losing to Boston College. I mean, Boston College looked like the better team.
They had 18 penalties. 18.
Yeah, Boston College beat Boston College today.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know if you saw the end of the game. Did you see the face mask at the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, Boston College and Boston College
end like that.
Well, apparently people are saying that he's in the hospital right now, and if that is the case, I'm sorry to hear that, and hopefully everything's okay with Jordan Travis. But assuming he does miss a few games, Mark, I mean, they're going to probably lose a few games. So Boston College is really bad.
Yeah, this is a topsy-turvy season.
Who does Florida State play next?
Florida State plays, I don't know. I'll have to, they got Clemson.
Yeah, I think they're going to lose to Clemson
They're
right
playing
now.
Clemson. Now, who would have made that statement 24 hours ago.
I did. Remember when Clemson lost to Duke? I called in and I said, I think Clemson's going to beat Florida State.
Well, I think you're just the contrarian by nature.
I probably am, but hey, sometimes they work out, okay? Like my Alabama going 7-5. Sometimes
that hasn't worked out yet.
Yes, but I've already got the apologies coming in saying I thought it was a completely insane take, and now it looks somewhat rational, Mark. Let me ask, what is the odds you think they go 7-5?
I am still, if I could predict any record for Alabama right now, I would say 9-3. So 7-5 would be 9-3 would be like 50%, and 8-4 would be like, whatever, 20 or 30%. So I'd say there's like a 15 or 20% chance that they're going to go 7-5.
It's creeping up there, Mark. I mean, they look worse than
up. They've got one loss. Just
like the odds of them going 7-5 is going.
Team, not Florida State, LSU.
Yeah, but LSU has looked decent. Alabama hasn't looked decent. They don't have a quarterback. That's obvious. They substituted Tyler Buckner for Ty Simpson, and Ty Simpson was the better quarterback. He went 5 of 9 for 78 yards against South Florida.
Maybe he'll be the starter this week.
Do you think Ole Miss has looked like the better team. Texas A&M has looked better. Tennessee has looked better.
I don't know about that.
Tennessee has looked better.
Ole Miss,
even
I
though
agree. Ole Miss, I agree with your assessment. Not Texas A&M. Texas A&M has played one team with a pulse, and they got controlled.
Yeah, but the teams that he play that don't have a pulse, they've controlled. Alabama hasn't even done that.
Yeah. Texas A&M has not put together a game like Alabama did against Texas.
Right. Well, Texas A&M the last 2 years has played Alabama tough. They get ready for Alabama, and I think they probably will beat them again this year. But
I think we've got a face mask. Is what we've got coming up on this. There was just a sack by Colorado State.
Yeah, I know. It's like 95% of the chat I don't think's even listening to us. I think they're just all typing out the Colorado State game. I'm pretty sure everybody in this chat is rooting for Colorado State.
I am. I'm going to admit that. I'm rooting for Colorado State. I think it sucks that they stopped them at the 1 yard line. They punted down to the 1, and they gave up a 98-yard drive or whatever it was to get this game tied. And now I'm sure their defense is gassed, and I didn't expect anything like this. I thought Colorado would beat them by 4 touchdowns. So it almost seems inevitable at this point. But maybe not. Maybe Colorado State will surprise us.
Now, let me ask you this, Mark, okay?
Yeah.
Let's say Colorado State scores Colorado scores a touchdown, hits the extra point. Yep. Colorado State scores a touchdown. Would you go for 2?
If I had a play that I felt extremely comfortable with that we had practiced, which I'm sure they should. Oh, what happened here? Did they just call a person? Is this officiating crew? Do they have it in for? They don't have it in for Colorado State. They could care less about Colorado State. But are they intentionally fixing this game at this point? Come on, that was a decent hit. All right. Anyway, Colorado State has 15 penalties for 161 yards in this game.
You got anything else you want to get off your chest about Colorado State?
This is what I'm going to do a video on as soon as we get done here. I'm just going to, even if it's completely irrational, I'm going to break my code, and I'm just going to go off on a video about how the refs screwed Colorado State in this game.
They didn't call that a personal foul. They called it targeting, Mark.
They put personal foul on the screen.
I think he just got ejected.
Okay, well, he didn't lower his head for the crown to come down, for one thing.
I like how Tim Prangley's saying you guys need to watch the game. As if, we're just happening to get the exact order of sequence rights about the plays. And we're just completely getting it right without watching the game. What are the odds of that, Mark?
Well, I am going to move it on here.
Yeah, that's all I got for you.
Get a line here. Thanks to
Yeah,
Real.
fight on to the Colorado State Rams.
There it is. Oh, the poor Rams. They've got I guess they don't have the world against them. I think the chat is rooting for CSU here. More invested in a Colorado State game than any of us have ever been in our lives. But they're going to go down. No, that was a good hit in the open field there. All right, we got whatever this name is here. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Oh, hey, Mark. My name is Mooley. It's been a while since I've been on here. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I
me.
recognize your handle. I just can't go through all that.
Okay, no worries. Well, I don't know how I fall off the last guy. That dude was pretty entertaining, but
he's on here all the time, so we enjoy hearing from you. So thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm just wondering, like, I know you've hinted about you've kind of talked about it a bit throughout this show, but like really, like, how do you even begin to evaluate this season? Because this season has felt so weird.
You're right. Florida State's looked like the best team in the country for 2 weeks, and they should have lost to a team that has looked like the worst Power 5 team, or right there with the worst Power 5 team in the country today. And that's just one of many things we could go on and on about.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely thought they should have lost. And I guess that kind of goes into like something I wanted to get to ask you is that I've kind of thought about this for the past few seasons, where we see like a top team struggle or even struggle mightily, like Florida State did, and then people start overreacting and saying, "Oh, this team is a fraud. They're frauds." And it's like, well, Florida State definitely looked awful today, but there's still a good chance they run the table. I mean, because I still can't forget what they did to LSU. I fell asleep in that LSU game. I literally fell asleep in the third quarter. I was like, nah, this is this ain't good. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about that, because like, and even like for example, there are teams that will like struggle in like the first half of game, but then they'll dominate in the second half of the game, and people are complaining. I'm like, but they made adjustments. Like, they made adjustments. Like, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that.
So you're saying that BC made adjustments? Is that who you're talking about specifically?
Oh, no. I'm not saying no. BC took it down the wire. I'm just saying there's also been games where a good team would struggle against a bad team in the first half, but then they'll end up blowing them out in the second half. But people will still complain and be like, "Oh, well, they struggled. They don't look that good." I'm like, well, they may have struggled, but they made the right adjustments at halftime.
Yeah, well, we have to also consider there's a ton of complexities involved in evaluating all of this. One being that we're talking about 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, and they have other things going on in their lives that affect their emotions and their mindset and their focus and all those things. There are different levels of coaching staffs, and there are certain schemes that are difficult for some offenses and defenses to play, while other schemes are a perfect fit for attacking them. So there's all those things going on that either accentuate a talent difference or negate it. And then there's just there are experience levels all over the field. You've got starters out there that have 40 starts under their belts, and you've got other lining up next to another guy who's making his first start of his career. So there's a lot of complexities to go into it beyond the sheer talent of these teams.
I completely agree. Which is why, like, I don't go slowly based on talent per se. So, like, one team could have a much more talented roster, you know, in terms of just like the rankings for like or like how they were rated out of high school. But then another team could be like a lot of senior veteran players who are 3 stars, but these are like 22, 23 years old, or they're Stetson Bennett, they're like 25, 26, and they have so much more, how do you say, experience under their belt compared to like someone who's like a 5-star maybe even, but you know, they're just starting to play college, and you know, it might be a completely different game for them than what they played in high school.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
For sure. And how do you feel about Washington? Do you think they could be the best Pac-10 team? Because I've kind of felt like that, but I'm not going to lie, that's kind of based off vibes. And also, I don't trust USC's defense. So I don't know. I don't know what you think about Washington or the Pac-12.
Well, I think that Washington, Colorado State just scored. I think that Washington had arguably the best team in the conference last year, and they had a much better defense than USC, and they have a passing game that's, I don't believe, quite as good as USC, but I think it's extremely close. So it's kind of indistinguishable.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they could be the best team in the Pac-12.
For sure. And they could very much, I don't know who, but someone was telling me, I saw someone on YouTube saying that Washington may have the best receiving core in the country. I don't know if you think the same as well.
I don't think so, but I think it's very close. I think that Ohio State, USC, Florida State, Texas, and Washington have the best wide receiver cores in the country. And I also would say that Washington has been just as dominant, if not even more so than USC, but they've done it against better competition. Boise State, Michigan State, for as bad as Michigan State is, they're still a Big Ten team. And Washington's run over these teams in as dominant or more dominant fashion than USC has against worse teams so far.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right. Thank you. And also, I know you've talked about this plenty, but the SEC, it's I don't even know where to begin other than Missouri got to win, so that's at least good. But Arkansas losing to BYU, as much as I never thought I would ever say this, but is that even that bad of a loss at this point?
It should be, but it's not. No,
yeah,
you're right, because both of those teams are probably going to finish about 6-6. And so Arkansas was like an 8 or 9 point favorite in that game and at home, and whipped up on BYU last year in Provo by 21 points. So I felt pretty safe picking Arkansas, and I know that they were up by 10 or 14 points in the first half at some point. So I was a little surprised, slightly surprised to see that they lost. I didn't see any stats or score or highlights or plays from the game. But yeah, that Kansas State win, that is the best win in the SEC this year.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't watch too much. I watched the end of the Arkansas game. They had a few linemen go down, and in like the last minute, they committed like 5 penalties when they had a chance to score and tie it, and it was so frustrating to watch. And it was just like, it's just been pretty clear the past 1.5 years that it's like KJ Jefferson has been carrying this team, and especially these past 2 weeks, because this week and last week Rocket Sanders hasn't been playing, and it's like those two guys have really been carrying. Not that Arkansas would have been that great of a team with them, but it's just like, man, I don't know why I'm even going on about BYU Arkansas, but it's just that, man, it's like, and our quarterback talent has just dropped off too now. And now it's like I'm even looking at Spencer Rattler like competing at the top, and it's like because with the way he was playing, especially in that first half, like he was running for his life and still making all those completions. I don't know where you would rank him in the SEC, but it's like, damn, I don't know. Like Jaden Daniels, when he's at his best, I think you could say he's the best for sure. But there have been a couple games last season where he looked a little shaky, and then KJ Jefferson's team is just awful around him. So I don't know what you think about this QBs in the SEC.
Well, I ranked the QBs in the SEC in the offseason, and I ranked – now I can't even remember who I ranked 1 and who I ranked 2, but I ranked Jaden Daniels and KJ Jefferson 1 and 2.
Obviously.
And then after that, I don't remember how I ranked them. I couldn't even tell you off the top of my head how I ranked them after that. But right now, I would say that unless I'm missing somebody, that Spencer Rattler is probably the third best quarterback in the SEC off the top of my head. I do think that Connor Weekman has a great upside, and I think that he's going to be really good. I just, I watched him play last week against Miami, and he had no support from an offensive line. He had no support from a running game. He had to throw the ball 53 times, and he was a gamer. So just much like Spencer Rattler was today, he had no running game, nothing, and still played extremely well. So,
that is true. That defense for A&M was awful last week.
Yeah,
completely awful. And like Miami, they were only close in the beginning because Miami made mistakes. But it's like, yeah. And I guess I'll just ask this last question. I know there's people behind us, but how do you also feel about like the Big Ten too? Because I think record wise they're haven't looked as bad as the SEC, but at the same time it's like I think, well, I'll say this: I think the Big 12 with those Group of 5 losses are the worst, and the SEC is like right after. But then it's like the Big 10. I don't know what you think about that. I still think the top 3 teams in the Big 10 are as good as any, but after that, it's like Wisconsin struggled today again, and some other teams have also just not been good too.
Yeah, there's an enormous drop off after those 3 teams. I don't think that's debatable until proven otherwise. And the rest of the league is just like every other league in the country. It's it's a hodgepodge of who knows who's going to win. The Big Ten lost 4 out of 6 games today to the ACC, but at the same time, while most of those were fair fights, Duke and Northwestern's not a fair fight, so that doesn't even sway my opinion, it being 4-2.
True.
So, yeah.
True. And even the ACC.
Let's see what Ohio State does against Notre Dame. All right, man.
Sure.
Appreciate the call.
Thank you, Mark.
Have a good night.
You too.
All right, let's keep it working here at the Voice of College Football. We got Holden on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Man, just trying to catch you into this game. Colorado got it up by 8 now.
Yes, they do.
Anyway, obviously I know there's probably even still more colors behind me, and I think you're Central Time, but even I know it's getting late for you, and for me, I'm Eastern. Oh, you're Eastern as well.
What are we? We are at 2:16.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, so it's getting real late.
You're fine.
So I just first thing, I think there was some confusion when Darrell MVP was on the line. I think he misspoke. He said Travis Hunter when he meant Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis, I think, was fine. I think he did get banged up at one point, but I think he played the whole game against BC, or he came back. Travis Hunter is the one who's in the hospital, so I don't think, at least in terms of him playing, Jordan Travis should still be playing next week against Clemson. It's Travis Hunter who's in the hospital, and I saw someone in the chat say it. I haven't really kept up with it, that maybe it's a ruptured spleen for Travis Hunter. And that would be unfortunate if so.
Absolutely. That sounds painful and serious, and it is.
And just you touched on this too, this Colorado State game. I remember right around the end of the first quarter, they had eight penalties for like 88 yards. And
yeah, whatever the number was, 15 just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it's I don't like to accuse refs of fixing games or anything, but it's something.
And for the record, I was kidding.
Oh, I got you. Yeah,
I didn't watch the game. I would never accuse an officiating crew of either. I would accuse them of being incompetent before I would accuse them of knowingly, egregiously trying to fix a game of some sort or being biased. But I would never do that if I didn't actually watch the calls and see.
Yeah, I got you. I've basically been locked in the whole game. I think they're just keeping a tight whistle on a very chippy game is what it is mostly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I think maybe that when you see a matchup like this, maybe the team that is not favored, the team that's considered not as good, even if this game's obviously been very close, but you'd say Colorado State is the less talented, not as good team. Maybe they play a bit more chippy and a looser whistle benefits them. And then when you get a tighter whistle like this, you get all the calls on both teams, and it's just Colorado State maybe is committing more penalties.
Yeah, they could be. We don't. I don't know. I haven't watched the game that closely to know. But yeah, anytime there's some kind of crazy discrepancy, and there's not in this game. It's not a crazy discrepancy, but it's like 15-8 or something. But I've seen games, of course, we all have, where it was 15-1. And you kind of question that, but at the same time, it could be very well that one team is that much more disciplined.
And then I'm going to get into some ACC talk because that's mostly what I follow. But first, I guess I'll ask you this in double because I think both your answers could maybe be questions right now. One, who has played so far, or like resume-wise, who is going to be your number one team in the country tomorrow, I guess, when you do your rankings? Do you think? And two, who do you actually think personally is the best team in the country right now?
The team with the best resume off the top of my head is Colorado State just scored, and they're going to have to go for 2 to stay in this game. Don't hold me to this because, of course, my rankings are going to come out after I have to go through the whole process of staying up till 5 a.m. to figure out all that.
And there goes that Colorado State score.
Yeah, I just said that. You must be like.
No. I was letting you know that they called a penalty. They're taking it off.
They did, though. I'm sorry. I apologize. Gotcha.
Or some kind. I think it's Pat. I don't know what this call is.
It's a personal foul. Ooh, this may end the game. Ooh, was there some kind of?
Something involving a block.
Yeah, they called a personal foul on the wide receiver who was blocking behind the play.
Blocking the back? That's not a personal foul, though. Blindside block?
Yeah, they showed it on the last replay. North Carolina might have the best resume in the country.
That's the team I was going to bring up. You're not going to, no one's going to say this team's top 5. And I personally, by bias, do not like North Carolina, but they might be a top 10 team, top 10 playing team right now.
No one's played a legitimate opponent every week like they have.
North Carolina. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They don't have a big, stamp it win, but they beat South Carolina more handily than Georgia did. They survived against an App State team that always gives Power 5 opponents trouble. And they beat what I think is one of the Big Ten West contenders in a obviously not very good division. So they're 3-0, and they're going to go into ACC play with, as I guess, the second best looking ACC team right now, maybe third. Depends on how you think about them and Duke. And Florida State, yes, they're all a toss-up, I guess, depending on your perspective. Who do you think personally is still the best team in the country? Is it still Georgia for you?
Yes.
Fair enough. That offense I know that offense was not, the offense was not the reason they won back-to-back national champions, but it just doesn't, it seems like it's even less than it has been, maybe to me a little bit. And they're.
Yeah, in the first half it was, not in the second half.
Yeah, but that's fair enough. I don't know. I feel like UNC almost tore up that South Carolina defense in a similar way. So I don't. The problem with Georgia is they don't play anyone really. There's not someone on their schedule that makes me think, oh, that's going to be a competitive game for really any top 5 team or any top 10 level team.
Well, they just played a competitive game today against South Carolina. So they play another like 4 teams that are similar to South Carolina.
Well, if those are all competitive, then I'm going to tell you that I don't think Georgia's the best team in the country.
Sure.
So that's what I'm saying. Like they don't play like Ole Miss might be the best team they play after how Tennessee looked today.
Maybe.
And I think they have that Ole Miss game at home.
All right, sir. Anything else?
Well, I did just Drill MVP sounded a little bit like an SEC apologist coming on here. I think you can say they're better than the Big 12, but I think it's pretty clear that they're the 4th best conference so far based on how they have played. Unless you want to say that the Big 10 has played nobody, and therefore you could argue the SEC is better.
I got you.
All righty, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right, Holden.
You have a good night, sir.
You too. Appreciate it. All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. And since we provide like nothing but content and next to no promotional, we got to get a few things in here. Shoot, we got an Amazon link in the description section, and it is the same shopping experience for all of you. It doesn't cost you a penny. Please use the Amazon link in the description section. All right, ticketsmarter.com, ticketsmarter.com. If you're going to a game, you can get $10 off with our promo code or $20 off, depending on your size of purchase. That's at ticketsmarter.com. Check it out right there with the promo code BIG and the promo code BIG20, ticketsmarter.com. And also, we've got Patreon and we've got the YouTube channel membership. You don't need to sign up for both of them. Sign up for either one of them. You get the same benefits. You get my predictions. You get all sorts of other good stuff, including the Discord link to talk college football 24/7, 365. All right, so join us on Patreon or right here on YouTube with a membership in Colorado State. Last gasp, and it's picked off, and that's your ball game. So Colorado wins over Colorado State 43-35 in a less than impressive game. But it was an impressive comeback in the final minute of the regulation there. Minnesota Dave chimes in. What's going on, Minnesota Dave?
Well, I guess the primetime train keeps rolling. I'm a little bit upset. I was hoping Colorado State wins this game. It's been a bad weekend for me, man. Vikings really are horrible, and the Gophers, I thought, well, maybe they'll have a chance to beat North Carolina, but yeah, North Carolina is really good. And Gophers gave them a touchdown by not being. And I guess the only thing I can basically say is it's the same old story. The Big Ten only has 3 teams that are really good, and everyone else is up for grabs. Anybody can beat anybody in this conference.
Yeah, outside of those 3. And I would be slightly surprised if anyone beat those 3. They went, what did they do? They went 24-0 against the rest of the conference last year.
Yeah. But, yeah, I just wanted to call in and basically just tell you that I didn't really have anything else on my mind. There's not much to really talk about with me. I'm footballed out right now.
All right. Well,
all right.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was Minnesota Dave, who is footballed out. I'm kind of questioning him calling at 2:00 in the morning to a football show if he's footballed out. I don't really understand that life decision, but Minnesota Dave, we love you. Okay. All right. Let's see. There was one super chat I did not get to. There might be a few now. No. Let's see. Erica asking here, what do you think of Penn State versus the Illini today? Well, I think that Penn State is one of the 5 or 10 best teams in the country. And I think that Illinois is more like one of the 50 best teams in the country. And I thought Illinois' defense was exceptional for most of that game, especially their defensive line. And Johnny Jerzon at Newton is just a freak. Like, he's another, when you talk about defensive players that pop on the screen that can take over a game, he's right up there with Harold Perkins, those kind of guys. Will Anderson from a couple years ago. Penn State was given gifts, 5 turnovers. They made plays on some of them. Other ones were bad reads by Luke Altmaier. Illinois is just another marginal, mediocre, blah, whatever term, phrase, word, terminology that you want to use that just means mediocre. Maybe the term would be mediocre. All of that is the Big Ten Western Division and is Illinois. So Penn State didn't play that well. Their defense is exceptional and might be one of the few defenses in the country where all 3 levels, defensive line, linebackers, secondary, are near elite. And they ho-hummed their way to a win over Illinois. But Illinois had chances to stay in the game, but just too inconsistent play out of their quarterback. They don't have any kind of wide receivers outside of maybe Isaiah Williams, who can really threaten a defense. And that's my take on those 2 teams. Brian says, how did Colorado get the ball first in both overtimes? That's a great question. I don't know. So that's nothing I would be able to answer from here. I don't know. I don't have the sound on. I would hope that they address that during the game. Now, yeah, I don't know, because they should have been playing, the way they typically do. All right. Appreciate all of you here at the Voice of College Football. We have reached our last call. Let me get to work on the top 25 that actually makes sense. And we have all sorts of people flooding in. I don't know why we went from like 130 to 184 like that. Probably all those people watching Colorado State that decided to turn us on. So we appreciate you being here. But hey, watch the rest of the stream. We've been on for 3 hours and 19 minutes. And I don't know that there's anything else to talk about concerning college football. Of course, we could break down every box score of every game for the entire weekend. We could do that. And I'm sure Oregon won its game like 1,000,000 to tonight. What, like 55-10? Was that the final? But really good day of college football. And we've got some landmark games next weekend, including Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, Notre Dame. And we will do our damnedest to break them all down for you this week. So get some sleep. I'm not going to, because I'm going to start working on the top 25 that actually makes sense, because I've got plans on Sunday. So if I don't start working on it right now, it's not going to get done until tomorrow night. And what happened last week is I didn't deliver the top 25 that actually makes sense until late on Sunday. And that, I believe, severely hurt our viewership. So we will get that done pretty soon. Good to see all of you. Thank you so much for your support. Big 12 channel, please subscribe. SEC channel, please subscribe. And we will see you sometime on Sunday.